and can't even see straight and eating a lot of good food. We're broadcasting live from the Cherry Farm over here in Parkin, Arkansas. Man, I just had 2 bowls of chili. I can't even see straight. Been up since early this morning, about 4:30. Been hunting every day, kind of losing track of the days. I know it's Sunday because it's the Sunday afternoon wrap-up show. We've got Jimmy Hodge up in Chicago, National College football contributor. Jake Crane down in Tupelo, the host of the J-Boy podcast, #1 in the country after a little over 6 months. And Jake, what was that, about close to 10 million hits you have already?
No, just some. And man, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not a technological genius when it comes down to this. I really just do what, the network kind of tells me the numbers. But they said our Twitter reach, I think, hit 16.5 million yesterday, which is just, insane. I had to look it up. So we're very fortunate and really appreciate everybody listening and going to keep doing it.
Hey, look, you know what? We put out great information here, do a lot of work. This is like Gordon Ramsay and staff every time we're on the air putting out the best information. We're not like everybody else. We're different. We ain't PC. We're not Kool-Aid drinkers. We just try to tell it like it is. But anyway, we'll be with you till 5 p.m. Central, 6 o'clock Eastern time, east of the Chattahoochee, east of the Caney Fork River, and in the hollers in Eastern Kentucky. Guys, hey, we were talking off the air before we started today about the bowl games. Most everybody is in a bowl game, and Jimmy made a good point. Soon the qualification would be that you just fielded a team, but looks like the first bowl game set for December 30th, Iowa and Missouri. There's a change, and I'll let Jimmy Hodge talk about that. And then, like I said, we've got a lot to cover. Auburn's got a new coach. We know about Vanderbilt. They got their coach pretty fast. And South Carolina got their coach, Shane Beamer, and want to talk about that. But Jimmy, look, Missouri doing what they're doing, is this a shock to you?
No, I mean, we just had so many of these positive tests among players. I mean, and teams. It's been on and off. So it's been often enough to where you're not really surprised by it. But it broke about 20 minutes ago, and it just said they had to suspend activities until Saturday. So obviously that wouldn't allow them to play in the Music City Bowl. So I don't know if they're going to have to find another team to play Iowa. I know this time last week, Army was out in the cold, and then one of the teams, I believe in the Independence Bowl, couldn't play because of positive tests. So Army found themselves in a position to play in a bowl, and of course they certainly deserve to. So I'm guessing the Music City Bowl is going to try to find an opponent, even though it would be on really short notice. But this is a year and a season where all precedent's kind of been thrown out the window. You just try to adjust on the fly, and the bowl officials have been working for probably the better part of a year to get ready to have this game. And I'm certainly, I would certainly think that they would like to have a game played just so that all their hard work could be rewarded. So we'll just have to kind of just wait and see on it.
Well, look, I'm just so glad that we're where we are right now in college football, because again, we like to bring this up. The narrative was so negative back in the spring and the summer, and Big Ten, especially in the Pac-12. I think the Pac-12 just has put on a dunce cap, and they're sitting over in the corner with a sign that says "Kick me" on it. They've been such a pitiful performer this year, and the Big Ten found a way to make Ohio State eligible to go to the playoffs, but Ohio State's a really good team anyway. But that conference is down this year. It's not that strong. Now we're going to get into the bowl games, and I don't think that's really an indicator of how strong one conference is over another. But you look at the playoff, Notre Dame, after they beat Clemson earlier in the season in South Bend in overtime without Trevor Lawrence, the quarterback for Clemson, and then they played again in the ACC championship game last week in Charlotte, and Clemson dominated the game. Jake Crane, was that a surprise to you that Notre Dame still was able to make the playoffs?
I mean, No, because it's Notre Dame, and I know that this all comes down to money and how much pageantry they can put into it. There's no telling how many Tom Rinaldi commercials are getting made as we speak right now between Alabama and Notre Dame. They're probably all over themselves going through archives like they're underneath the Vatican or something. But, you know, in my opinion, I thought A&M should have got in. I mean, everybody, and I've had guys on my show that said, you know, well, the North Carolina win for Notre Dame is a better win than the Florida win for A&M. I don't understand that. A&M lost to Alabama when they had Jalen Waddle. I think it was truly about putting the 4 best teams in there. A&M should have got in. People, and I said this last time, I understand Trevor Lawrence was out the first game against the Notre Dame Clemson game, but that wasn't the biggest person that was missing. Clemson didn't miss a beat on offense. It was Skowski, the middle linebacker, that was missing the first time that allowed Ian Book to break contain and get outside the pocket and extend plays and hit the freshman Meyer and that big white wide receiver they got, this pretty good player down the field. Well, the second game, Skowski kept them boxed in. They almost used him like a spy a lot, especially when they would green dog the back when he wouldn't go out for a route. And you saw what happened when Ian Book had to make plays in the pocket in the routine timing of when the play is designed and not just, you know, wheel and deal. And they weren't able to do it, really not at all. And you see what happened. So, again, I look at the teams Notre Dame played. I look at the teams that A&M played, and I understand there's a record difference. But if the conference is stronger, of course there's going to be a record difference. That doesn't make any sense. All you're doing is saying that there's less parity in other conferences than the SEC, therefore making the SEC the toughest conference. So I wasn't surprised that they got in. It's par for the course for me. They're going to get their brains beat in the first round. I think everybody's down across the board. The Pac-12 not being a player is just kind of what's been happening even without a pandemic lately. I'll be surprised if you see a national champion out of there for a while. So surprised, no. Disappointed, yes. But it's almost like when you did something wrong and you knew you were going to get spanked when you got home from school. It's kind of that feeling. You just got to get it over with, and it's just going to be there when you get home.
Look, the ACC is this is the question I'm going to throw to Jimmy. With Florida State's decline in the last 4 years, they have really fallen off a cliff. Mike Norvell and Florida State really didn't look like a team that improved much at all this year. They're a dumpster fire that nobody wants to put out. And that's a shock. And in recruiting, they're really not doing anything in the state of Florida this year. That's another shocker because Florida State has traditionally been one of the better recruiting machines out there, not just by virtue of, hey, we're in the state of Florida, but it's a great brand. They've got a lot of tradition and they win a lot. They've got 3 national championships in the last 27 years. But Clemson's rise is not due just to the fact that Florida State's down, you know, or Miami's down or Virginia Tech's down. North Carolina is pushing and they're getting better. And then they had Notre Dame in the ACC this year, guys. And those two teams split. Looking ahead to next year, you know, let's look out ahead. Jimmy, is the ACC with Notre Dame's not going to join a conference? We had Francis on the show a few weeks ago. They're a national brand, and I don't think they're going to let themselves be put into a conference. Now, Alabama's in the SEC, but they're a national brand. No, Texas is in the Big 12, but they're a national brand. Is there a possibility, guys, that there will be pressure after the success? Notre Dame, because they played in a conference this year and splitting with Clemson, got so much recognition for that. That's probably why they're in the playoffs. Jimmy, I want you to answer that, and then I'll throw it back to you, Jake.
Well, there's no chance Notre Dame's going to join a conference in football. As a matter of fact, when it was announced that the ACC was going to go to an all-conference schedule, and that applied actually to all the Power 5 conference schedules, that put Notre Dame in a really difficult position because as a part of their contract and being a full-fledged member of the ACC in all sports except football, they're contracted to play 5 ACC opponents every year in football. And with that being said, they were still stuck in a position where they needed to play or needed help on getting 5 more opponents to play what would be considered a full season in a pandemic year. So the ACC graciously bailed them out. And of course, in typical form, Jack Swarbrick, the Notre Dame AD, gave this snarky response like, and not only did he say we're not going to be a member of the ACC in football, but he basically said that instead of thanking the ACC for allowing them to play a full schedule, he acted like Notre Dame was doing the ACC a favor by honoring the conference with their presence for 10 football Saturdays. So that told you right there that they were they're going to probably be an independent at least as long as it gets to a point that it's not financially feasible anymore for them.
Yeah, and Jake, when you look at the ACC compared to the SEC, this year you had Florida and Alabama. It looked like it was going to be a great showdown, and then that last weekend of the season for regular season, LSU showed up with a team that was just a complete mess the entire season. Bo Pelini already has been fired, their defensive coordinator. I mean, he just did not fit from the beginning. Again, I think it's because he had not kept up with the changes that have taken place in the SEC and college football, the hurry-up tempos, the offenses that are just – there's so much to – he just was not ready. LSU beats Florida, and that kind of – that Florida was thinking, hey, we win – sure, we're going to beat LSU. And then we go and somehow beat Alabama. You know, they're in the playoffs. But the SEC is much more competitive than the ACC. What is it about the ACC with Clemson? They're not playing week in and week out that tough a competition, but when they get on the national stage, they're ready to play.
Yeah, well, the first thing about Bo Pelini's problem was he thought they were going to be able to run man all year, just like they did the year before, and that they were going to be able to score enough points on offense to win games. And they didn't put a whole lot of zone in. And then all of a sudden, when man didn't work, they had to go to zone, and they weren't coached up on it well enough. And that's why you saw all the bust. I think it was more of an arrogance thing with Bo Pelini. And once you get caught in that trap early, you're having to play catch up the whole year. But I look at the ACC and the SEC, and Clemson, recruiting wise, is one reason they were able to stay in the game. They recruit like a top tier SEC program. They have facilities like a top tier SEC program. And obviously they've won a lot, which lends to recruiting as well. But there's also another thing. Clemson, you can go through the ACC, and by the time you get to the Final Four, you're not nearly as beat up as a team that went through an SEC schedule, even when you had the non-conference games as well. You're not having to go through that grind every week of just people that are about as big as you are, close to as fast as you are. You may be a little more elite than them, and I use that word very cautiously, but it's so much more of a grind to get there, and it really makes you appreciate the teams like Alabama. And I'll say this, that Alabama-Florida matchup probably went about how it was going to go, even if Florida had beaten LSU, to be honest with you. That's kind of the game that I envisioned. I actually thought Alabama was going to win by a little bit more. I know Florida scored late, but I thought that game ended up being pretty good. But, you know, I look around, and I just watch ball everywhere, and I think everybody's down. I think outside of, you know, Alabama's the best team in the country. It's not close. Clemson's up there as well. I think it's Alabama and Clemson and everybody else. But to answer your question, it's just a pure numbers game. You have a lot better teams and a lot better places in the SEC in the middle and in that lower tier. Once you get out of that top tier in the ACC, you really kind of fall off a cliff and see everybody at the bottom. So at the end of the day, it's just the grind. It's injuries. That's why roster structure is so important. That's why depth is so important. And that's why Nick Saban and Alabama have had so much success. Because if somebody goes down, a la Landon Dickerson, well, they've recruited so well and they've planned for everything, so nothing's ever a surprise. So at the end of the day, the ACC is just weaker than the SEC, and you're able to kind of navigate your way through it a little bit healthier and get to the end a little bit less beat up.
And really, the SEC, it does mean more. The passion of the fans is there. Again, over and over, all we heard was no coach will be fired in the year of the China virus. And I kept debunking that myth, as we all did. And that shows you the importance of football in the SEC. Even a school like Vanderbilt, who did something in their history, and they've had, you know, not much of a history in the last half century. They did something they'd never done before, and you got to be proud of it. They went winless this year. I mean, they did not win a game, and they fired their coach.
Played with a girl. It's amazing.
Yeah, they played with a girl kicker. Like to see what happened if they ever tried a fake field goal and she went around right in and ran into some 6'5", 270-pound strong side defensive end in the open field. I mean, then we'd have congressional hearings. Football is too rough. It's too violent.
There'd be a Title IX lawsuit somewhere in there.
Yeah, I mean, it's silly. But and then you look at South Carolina. Will Muschamp is one of those coaches. I think he's a great coordinator, great recruiter. He's not a head coach. He's had it all going for him at Florida. He had one good year. South Carolina, it was just an exercise in futility. And he'll end up somewhere as a defensive coordinator and make a lot of money. And he's got $20 million between the buyout to fire him at Florida and South Carolina. He has generational wealth. If he manages it right, he'll never have to worry about money. But then you look at Auburn. People say, how can you fire Gus Malzahn? Well, I mean, year after year, you're 7 straight years of losing 4 or more games. And people keep talking about, well, he got him to the national championship game his first year. Okay, so what? How many times has Alabama been since then, or LSU, or Georgia? What matters in the SEC is what you're doing. You've got to control the controllables, but also what your rivals are doing. Jimmy, what other conference in America fired more coaches in the year of the virus than the SEC?
Yeah, off the top of my head, I can't think of anybody. But with that being said, I was still surprised because those buyout numbers are big for any school, but yet when it comes to the long-term prognosis of a program, it's the it's the board of trustees. Those are the guys putting up the money to finance these buyouts that have the biggest say so. So that's where they were. They obviously confided with the administration, obviously the president of each school, that being Vanderbilt, South Carolina, and Auburn, and came to a census that hey, we have some individuals that have come forth with the money to finance the buyouts, and we're going to move forward, because if we don't, in many cases you can lose 2 years if you continue to go forward with somebody you think is not going to be the best coach for you in the long run. You would lose the next year as maybe a season in futility, with knowing deep down that you're not going to get where you want to with this coach. And then secondly, you would be, instead of making a change, you would be losing really 2 years, when you think about the fact that you would be bringing in a guy that you do think is the long-term solution. You would lose a year, bringing in a guy that you would be saying the next year otherwise, man, we should have brought in a new guy instead of keeping this one. So the bottom line was they had the financial resources to do it, and they just came up with a consensus on it. That's just where we are right now. Now, I don't know how many other power conferences would have been able to make this move with as many as 3 of their coaches, but the SEC did, and again, they were able to do it, and that's where we are.
Yeah, and I think if you keep a coach, and there's more talk about that coach's shortcomings and should he be fired, if there's that talk dominates, it kills you. It kills recruiting, and everything then from that point falls apart. And then if you look at a head coach who's not successful, he starts firing his coordinators. I mean, that's just like getting a stay of execution. And it's inevitable that you're going to be walking the green mile sooner than later. And, look at Texas. Look at Tom Herman. Go back in 2016 season. Tom Herman was the coach. Everybody had to have him. I mean, he had a good year. They won 13 games once at Houston. He's been at Texas, and Texas now 11 straight years. Well, this year they lost 3, maybe 4, but that's 11 straight years of losing, 10 in a row of losing 4 games. And I think they lost 4 again this year. Trust me, if they'd have played more games, Texas would have lost at least 4. That program is a classic case of more money than sense. A $14 billion endowment, as fine of facilities as you will see in college athletics in America. But it's not like Texas A&M. And maybe A&M is figuring it out. They've let Jimbo become the voice and be in control. I don't think A&M's great, but they're going in the right direction, and they're recruiting better talent on both sides of the line of scrimmage, especially on defense. They're getting more of a SEC type front seven, but money alone isn't the thing. You look at Auburn, they're going to build a $100 million football only facility. But people say, how can you spend that kind of money? I've listened to some of these idiots, talking heads in the national media. You both have heard them. How can schools pay these buyouts for these coaches in the year of this pandemic virus, whatever? It's called business. You cannot tread water forever as a nation. A university can't tread water forever just because, there are always a million excuses to not do something. You've got to take control and do what you think is right and look forward. And I think that schools, they make decisions that they think are in their best interest. But let's look to, and I want to throw this one at you, Jake. I look around at the Big 12. That conference started off the first weekend. You had Arkansas State on the road, beat Kansas State. Iowa State got beat by Louisiana Monroe. And Campbell is thought to be a really good coach at Iowa State. What is wrong with the Big 12 that they can't play even a modicum of defense? They have usually a couple of good edge rushers on most of those teams, but it's just a disaster.
Yeah, well, I mean, what's new?
Yeah.
There's a reason that a Big 12 thing. There's a reason. Look, there's a reason the SEC wins the national championship almost every year, or Clemson.
Yeah.
I mean, Clemson is built just like an SEC school.
Absolutely.
I mean, again, it's everybody else has kind of been also ran, and the difference is the linemen. That's the difference. The skilled players, and again, what Billy Napier is doing at ULL, they went up there and they just beat Iowa State. They beat them with personnel. And there's some teams in the Sun Belt like Coastal that will sneak some linemen in there, and that's the misconception. Now, at some places, the skill players are so much more elite than others, but there's teams in the Sun Belt, some of them are transfers, some of them are guys that are JUCO guys that are under the radar, that are just as good as some of these receivers at SEC places. You've just never heard about them, or they might not be big enough. But it's the linemen. That's the difference in the Big 12. Everybody says it's the offense and this, that, and the other. Well, it is football. It's 11 on 11, and there's not one offense that's just way better than any other offense, schematically, to where no defense can stop it. If that's the case, then everybody would run it and nobody would ever play defense. So I look at the Big 12. I think it's a lack of defensive linemen. And again, if you kind of look at the way it's built, I mean, Oklahoma, it shocks me that Texas hasn't been able to win. To me, I think that's the most shocking thing in sports. They basically are their own country. They should win 9-10 games every year, and they should be dominant across the board and should have unbelievable depth. But, Oklahoma's really been the flagship for that conference, but they don't play defense. They got in a shootout, obviously, with Georgia a couple of years ago. Defense ended up costing them the game. But at the end of the day, it's just like anything. It comes down to up front. That's where the SEC dominates. And you can look at all these other conferences, and there's kind of one recurring theme. It all starts and ends up front, and all the defensive linemen are in the SEC. And if they're not, they're at the top schools in the ACC, or they're in the Big Ten. So I think that's kind of where college football is right now. I think the Pac-12 is going to continue to lose steam, especially with everything that's gone on. And you're going to continue to see this monopoly, really, that the SEC, Clemson, and the Big Ten have over college football. And it's really not even the Big Ten. I mean, they haven't won a national championship since Ohio State a while ago. So, again, at the end of the day, man, it just means more, and that's on the scoreboard too.
And you go back and look at a couple of years ago when Alabama and Oklahoma played in the college football playoff. At the end of the first quarter, Alabama led 21-0. Alabama had 194 yards of offense. Oklahoma had 0. Now, they got some garbage yardage and points late in the game with Kyler Murray, but they were throwing him around like a great white shark getting hold of a lamb. I mean, it was really ridiculous. And they run a gimmicky offense. You look at these quarterbacks, Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts, they'll go to the NFL for a year and a half.
Ryan, I'm going to push back on you on that a little bit if you don't mind, man.
Yeah.
I don't think it's the offense. I mean, what Lincoln does isn't gimmicky, really. I mean, they get up and they run trucks. They'll run one back power. It's a lot of gap scheme. The problem is they can't stop anybody. But the real problem with the offense is the tempo. And I think that's something that Lincoln Riley's kind of came back on. That's going to be Lane Kiffin's problem. That's going to be Hugh Freeze's problem. There's all these coaches that want to get in the league and run this up-tempo, explosive offense, and we're going NASCAR pace the whole time. Well, the defense can't keep up.
That's
you can
right.
play good on defense and give up 30 to 35 points, especially with the offenses that you're playing. So to me, I don't think what they do is really gimmickly. It's actually genius the way they mix the run and the pass. And what's the most beautiful thing about what Oklahoma does is the way they communicate it. It looks like Lincoln Riley's over there giving a sign language seminar in one of these COVID briefings in New York while Cuomo sits next to him. And they're able to communicate so many things with one hand movement. But until that's why defensive coordinators don't want to be there. And that's why defensive coordinators with Lane Kiffin are going to struggle. That's why the only guys that'll take that job, Mike Leach too, look at the guy Mississippi State hired, are young up-and-coming guys that have to take it because it's such a good job. You're not going to see Will Muschamp take the job at Ole Miss with Lane Kiffin because you're fighting uphill defensively. So I see what you're saying. I just want to make sure that I do say that Lincoln does a really good job schematically. Offensively, it's just more of a pace than anything.
Well, I should have used a different term. It's so much pressure is put on the defense. If you look at the national championship Auburn won in 2010, that was one of the top 3 or 4 worst defenses in school history. They gave up 26, almost 27 points a game. But as the games, every game that season when Cam was there and late second quarter and then the entire second half, they tended to just play almost a lockdown defense. And classic example is Alabama's up 24-0. Auburn ends up winning that game in 2010, 28-27. In the second half, Auburn held Alabama to a total of 67 yards of offense. And when you look at the Big 12, it is such a track meet. Those big linemen, you're lucky to get 35 or 40 plays a game out of them at that pace. If you don't have depth, or at least quality depth, like those Big 12 teams don't have, that's where the disasters occur. And when they get in, Oklahoma got into the shootout with Georgia. And Georgia, you didn't think was really built for that back in 2017. But, hey, Sonny Michel and Nick Chubb and Jake Fromm were able to get the job done. And, of course, they lost in the national championship game to Alabama. But, yeah, it's the depth. If you look at the blue chip index, Oklahoma's got talent. But when was the last time you saw them sign a couple of 4 or 5-star defensive linemen, tackles, not just edge rushers, but tackles? And Lincoln Riley's a heck of a coach. That offense is exciting. But you're right. Lane Kiffin is going to be, 7-5, 8-4 at Ole Miss at best, unless he slows down his offense some and gives his defense and helps protect his defense and gives them a chance to win. You may not agree with that, but in the SEC, if you're not 2 or 3 deep on your front 7, you have no chance of getting to Atlanta other than as a fan. Jimmy, you agree or disagree?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why Oklahoma has had the edge in the Big 12 for so long, especially on the offensive side of the ball. They produced a lot of NFL linemen. I mean, we talked about it earlier in the year when the Brockermeyer twins from Dallas committed to Alabama. The big turning point, the game changer, was the fact that despite their dad, Blake, who was an All-American at Texas and played in the NFL many years, a lot of people thought that the Twins would go there. He cited the fact that over, I think, the last 14 years, Texas had produced 1 NFL lineman.
Yeah.
Whereas since Saban had been there, they had produced somewhere in the neighborhood of 18 or 19.
Yeah.
And that just, that's just a very difficult reality to overcome. Whereas, as I mentioned, Oklahoma's had a number of very good offensive linemen that are still playing in the NFL, and that makes a big difference. And also, when you have a lack of not only size, strength, and athleticism up front on both sides of the ball, it creates a style of football that just permeates throughout the Big 12, which is what critics would refer to as just basically almost a touch football,
It is.
or 7-on-7. You just don't get a lot of hitting. And I certainly know the coaches would not like that to be the case, but it sort of is when you don't have that size of alignment and you don't have the depth of play that power football that you see in the SEC and pretty much throughout the Big Ten and in some schools in the ACC, and that's why you've only had the Big 12 win one game in the college football playoffs since it was instituted in 2014, and also the Pac-12's only won one game in the college football playoffs since again it was instituted, and they haven't had a team even participate in the CFP since Washington lost to Alabama in 2016. So, yeah, it's certainly a very valid argument, and obviously those schools haven't shown any signs of closing the gap.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. We're going to pick up on those points after this commercial break. Let me say something about a couple of our sponsors. Number one, Tom Dorian, the Dorian Agency, 6240 Poplar Avenue in Memphis. I've known Tom myself 42 years, since 1978. CBHS graduate, University of Memphis graduate, started 3 years on the offensive line. Tough man, father of five, member of Curcio, great man. He's my friend. If you're like most people, you do not like talking about insurance. Audrey, my wife, and I met with Tom this summer. He talked about life insurance, property and casualty, all different kinds of insurance. We listened. It's like having a conversation with a friend. In my case, it is. Even if you don't know Tom, he's that easy to talk to. A couple of days later, we said, hey, we want to do what you are talking about. Easy to work with. Also, if you're like most Americans, you might go years before you make a claim on your homeowners, property and casualty, whatever type of insurance. They have a program at the Dorian Agency that will allow you to get up to 25% return of premium. Look up on our website, sidelines.live, the Dorian Agency. Tom Dorian, easy to talk to, 6240 Poplar Avenue. Give him a call, 901-328-5858. That's 901-328-5858. Also, Red River Ford Toyota. Stopped by there yesterday about closing time over in Wynn, the city with a smile on the other side of Crowley's Ridge. Look, if you live in Memphis, the Mid-South area, you know this. The Dobbs name in the car and truck business is gold. They've been around a long time. John Dobbs Jr. from Memphis is back, part of the Red River Auto Group ownership group at Red River Ford Toyota in Wynn. They are closed today on Sunday. They will be reopened Monday morning at 8 o'clock, bright and early. They bought the dealership October 5th. They have got a new level of enthusiasm. Great to work with. Over 700 used cars and trucks also in their inventory. They've got all the brand new Fords and Toyotas, cars, trucks, and SUVs. Justin Wynn, the general manager, easy to talk to. Rusty Howard, the sales manager, is always out there on the floor. Nate, all the guys, the salesmen, the people in the service department are committed to making the experience the absolute best when it comes to buying a car, truck, or SUV. Red River Ford Toyota, you're going from Memphis on I-40, go north at the Forest City exit about 11 miles. If you're going back and forth, like Chris Perkins today, to Heber Springs on Highway 64 in Wynn, it's about a half mile south of Highway 64 in Wynn. Red River Ford Toyota. Check them out. Great people to work with. Glad to have them as a sponsor here on Sidelines. We'll be right back till 5 p.m., 6 on the East Coast with more of the Sunday Sidelines wrap-up show. Okay. All right, guys. Hold on. Let me get Billy on. He's coming in here. Just 1 second. All right. Oh,
Hi, this is Bill Roberts. I can't take your call right.
Okay. Waiting for Billy to call back in. I missed him. Let's see. Hold on. Yes, sir. Okay. Hello, RW. Okay. Rebels. Okay. Just 1 second, guys. Y'all, this Ole Miss Indiana game is intriguing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, take it, man.
Yeah. Hold on 1 second. Okay. 5:15. Okay. Let me try again. Okay.
Hi, this is Bill Roberts. I can't take your call right now.
Okay. Somebody call back. Just 1 second. Okay. Okay, just 1 second. Man. Yeah. Looking here, guys. Ole Miss and Indiana. God. Let's see.
We're gonna be leaving in about 30 seconds.
January 2nd. Okay, coming back, guys. All right. Okay. 10 seconds. Ready? All right, we're back with you again. Sunday afternoon wrap-up show, www.sidelines.live. Be with you till 5 p.m. Central, 6 on the East Coast. Jimmy Hodge, national college football contributor up in Chicago. Jake Crane, likewise, also host of the J-Boy podcast down in Tupelo, Mississippi. Already number one in the country after a little over 6 months. And we've been talking a lot about SEC, ACC, Pac-12, Big Ten, you name it. Why are some teams better than others? Well, it's obvious: recruiting, commitment, greatness. Looking at Ole Miss, guys, we were talking about this a minute ago. Lane Kiffin, he runs that up-tempo, fast-paced offense. He is a great developer of quarterbacks. That's an intriguing matchup between what's going on at Indiana. That is a program. They're changing the culture. They're changing the culture at Indiana completely. You've got a guy there, Tom Allen, born and raised, in Indiana, around Bloomington, is absolutely committed. Looks like he wants to be a lifer there, and he's doing something special. It reminds me of a lot of what happened to Wisconsin when Barry Alvarez came there after being at Notre Dame. They've kept that going. The culture that Wisconsin is committed to winning. They play pretty good football up there. Is this Indiana Ole Miss game is, to me, it's very appealing matchup. Ole Miss with Elijah Moore and Snoop Connor and Jerrion Ely, Matt Corral, but they don't have much of a defense. But athletically, how are they going to match up? And I'll start with you, Jimmy, against Indiana in this bowl game coming up January 2nd, because I like Ole Miss's chances in this game. I wish their defense was better, though.
Well, what Ole Miss can't do is have a repeated LSU game where you have 5 or 6 turnovers, because they're not going to be able to withstand that, because Indiana's offense is very good. And what was kind of impressed me about the Ole Miss performance against LSU was the fact that even though they turned the ball over 6 times total, capped off by that fumble in the closing minute by Corral on that scramble, and he ran for the first down. The fact that they had a chance to win the game despite that, 6 turnovers, and then you scored whatever 48 points, or just a huge number. Um, it tells you just how I think that Kiffin has really developed just a spirit of competitiveness uh, with this team. Because most teams that turn it over that many times are just going to get annihilated. But again, against Indiana, that's simply going to get you beat. Because Tom Allen has, yeah, as you mentioned, he's transformed the culture there. His players absolutely love him. They will, they'll knock down walls for him, and they're going to play you for a full 60 minutes. If Ole Miss can be turnover free, I think they really have a good chance. Probably will win the game, but with Ole Miss, you just don't know again if they're going to be turnover free or not. And also, you got to remember that every time a Big Ten team plays an SEC team, they really prepare for this game like it's the Super Bowl because over the last 20 years, they're tired of getting um, uh, just negative feedback about how they can't win in bowl games, they can't beat SEC teams. And as a result, you're always going to get a 100% effort from the Big Ten team. Whereas with an SEC team, especially this year, lots of times you may have key players that pass on playing in the bowl game. And then, secondly, the ones that are still there, especially ones that may be returning, they're thinking, oh man, we've gone through this 10-game SEC meat grinder. This is the only year that, anybody's had to play a 10-game SEC schedule. Man, yeah, let's get ready for this game, give it our best shot, and call it a year.
Yeah.
Whereas Indiana, they're going to be focused to give it everything they got for 60 minutes. So you really got to be careful about that aspect also.
Yeah. And I want to say that it's really, to me, a disappointment the way so many of the SEC teams approach bowl games. If they're not in the playoffs, it's not a really big six, bowl game. They don't seem to care. And like you said, whether it's they are sitting out because they're going to be a high draft pick or any number of reasons, it's disappointing because as a fan, I expect my school to be committed to winning 110% every time out. And again, that's why Indiana, I think, is going to show up in this game completely prepared, and it's going to be on Lane Kiffin and his staff to get Ole Miss ready. But if Ole Miss doesn't show up ready to play and turns it over 3 or 4 times, they'll get killed in this game because Indiana, like you saw Minnesota last year, look, talk about all the 4- and 5-star ratings you want. And Jake, and Billy Roberts has joined us now from over in Atlanta. And Jimmy, last year I looked at the roster before Minnesota played Auburn in the Outback Bowl. There were 4, maybe 5 players on Minnesota's roster rated 4-star or better. Auburn had like 60 something, and Minnesota completely curb stomped Auburn to the curb. It wasn't even competitive. Minnesota had one lineman that was bigger than a refrigerator. He weighed over 400 pounds, and they just absolutely dominated Auburn. If these SEC teams come in there thinking that they're going to win just because they've played a 10-game SEC schedule, they're going to get their butts kicked. I really think they are. Billy Roberts, as a fan, you've seen a lot of really disappointing performances by Auburn, Georgia, whoever in bowl games. You go back a few years ago, Justin Fields' freshman year, he stood over there in 2017 on the sidelines with a pout face, spreading the dreary wearies all over the place against Texas, and everybody got all excited because Texas beat Georgia, but Georgia didn't care about that game. The next year, Texas was preseason ranked really high. It doesn't matter. Billy, get inside these people's heads. You're a great mind. Give us your response to that. What do you see?
Well, I agree with everything you're saying, and I'll tell you, I got up 2 years ago and went to the Auburn Central Florida
Oh,
Peach Bowl.
go back to bed.
And the first problem was it was New Year's morning, and there was a 11 a.m. kickoff, and so we had to be out the door at 9 a.m. to get on MARTA and go down there. And me and my friend Chris, who you've met, Rob,
Yeah,
he's a
yeah.
great Auburn guy.
Oh yeah.
And Auburn didn't want to be there. The fans didn't want to be there, including me.
And they weren't there.
Half the defense, stood down and didn't go. Everybody got the avian flu or something. I don't know what it was. But
Carlton Davis didn't play.
They had a one-armed linebacker down there, if I remember, and a pretty damn good quarterback. And Central Florida was saying, if we win this game, we're going to be co-national champions with Alabama because we'll be undefeated.
Yeah.
And of course, we laughed and said, you guys aren't playing Auburn, but Auburn woke up in the fourth quarter and Jared Stidham tried to make a game of it, but it was too late. And he wasn't interested in being there himself, but his competitive juices took over about 8-9 minutes to go, and they made it close, but the damage was done, and Central Florida did win that game. And so that was even more of an abomination than the Minnesota game last year. But, one of my good riddances with Malzahn in the last week or two as the Auburn coach was he did not prioritize the meaningless, quote-unquote, bowl games. I agree with you. If Auburn shows up and they're putting on the uniform, I want them to make me proud. I don't want them to mail it in and make excuses if they lose, going, we didn't really care. We were looking forward to going to Disney World anyway. It didn't matter. I don't want to hear that. I want Auburn to play well and not embarrass the school or themselves, and I think you're right. And it matters with recruiting because recruits are watching that game and they want to see that the guys on the sidelines are into it and fired up. So a lot of eyes are watching it. And you can't just goof around and mail it in and say, well, we're not in the playoffs, so it doesn't matter. Georgia's guilty of the same thing. They were in a Sugar Bowl a couple of years ago, and I don't remember who the opponent was.
It was Texas. That's what we talked about.
Prize.
Justin Field.
Yeah, that's right. And Alabama's done it. They were in a Sugar Bowl that was a consolation prize, and I think
Utah and Oklahoma.
I'm thinking the Oklahoma. So even the best of the best that are the most well coached, the most professionalized in terms of their approach, like Alabama, even they mail it in if they're out of the playoffs, and that's got to change. And I love the playoffs. I think it was overdue. I hope they do expand it. But one of the unfortunate byproducts of the playoff is it's rendered the rest of these games a little meaningless. Now, let me go to this, Rob. We had the Liberty Bowl director on a week or so ago, and on your
Harold Grader. Yes, Harold Grader.
So, and I said to him, here's an idea to make these tier 2 bowls matter. Make them that first round of the playoff, expand the playoff, and have a Music City Bowl, have a Liberty Bowl be the first round, and have it the day after Christmas. Like, wouldn't it have been great yesterday to have a Liberty Bowl that was a first round playoff game, in a quarterfinal, round of 8? How cool would that have been? And then the winner goes to one of the New Year's 6 games in the semifinal, and then those winners play for the national championship. I think that would be a way to make this tier 2 bowl game matter, and in a way where the stakes would be high, the ratings would be high, the local, selling out of the game would matter, and you'd get a ton of people coming to Memphis. But let's just like Oklahoma was in a Liberty Bowl that was round 1 of a playoff next year. You'd have a bunch of people from Oklahoma making their way to Memphis, right after Christmas and selling out every hotel in town. How cool would that be?
Yeah, and I think the bowl games are going to matter. You look at the Liberty Bowl, Arkansas and TCU. That game's going to matter. Arkansas fans have been starved for a bowl game, and they will turn out. Now, once you, though, win 11 or 12 games, and then the next year you're in the Birmingham Bowl, that's a disappointment. It's like, hey, I got to eat at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. Now you're taking me to CK's to get a steak over there that's like shoe leather, okay? Jake Crane, host of the J-Boy podcast down in Tupelo, birthplace of Elvis Aaron Presley. He is still alive, according to my friends over here in Arkansas. But anyway, Jake, let me ask you this. I believe it does, and I want you to tell me what you think. I believe every time your brand is out on display on national TV, if you soil your linens, okay, put on a terrible performance, it hurts your brand and it hurts your recruiting. Yes or no?
Oh yeah, I mean, you obviously want positive momentum, especially nowadays in today's age where everybody wants everything instantly, and it's not even what have you done for me lately. It's what are you going to do for me tomorrow. And you obviously want positive momentum, whether that be a bowl game, whether it be a regular season game, especially when you do have this other signing day coming up in February. But I do for a second. I talked about that Ole Miss Indiana game. I find that game really intriguing. Number one, because Ole Miss wants to go there and win it. Lane and them, they have a lot of excitement. There's a lot of juice in Oxford. Coming off the way that they played at some moments. Obviously, Matt Corral's been a little iffy with the ball sometimes, but he also turns around, I think, accounts for 4 or 5 touchdowns to kind of balance it out. But you look at Indiana, they just lost their DC, Kane Womack, a guy that I know who's a heck of a coach, just took the job at South Alabama, who's a rising star down there. Tom Allen, obviously, is going to have those guys ready. Michael Penix, their quarterback, got hurt, isn't playing. So when you lose your DC, and again, I don't think Indiana's seen an offense like Ole Miss's. There's another part of this deal in these bowl games where the teams actually are trying to win, where you got to look and say, okay, who has Indiana played that's like Ole Miss, and who has Ole Miss played that's like Indiana? There's been a whole heck of a lot more times where Ole Miss has played somebody like Indiana, but Indiana has played an offense that operates the way that Ole Miss does with the up-tempo while being able to stay multiple and out-formation you in the way they attack the middle of the field. So I think Ole Miss is going to be able to score some points. And Indiana, defensively, they're going to be where they're supposed to be. But again, the first time you see something, Ole Miss may come out and jump on them, 14-7, 20, because they're not going to be able to stop Indiana over the long run. They may come out and get a couple stops. They need the Sam Miller kid to really ball off the edge. He's really their only guy. And they need Indiana to make some mistakes. But how much is Indiana going to be willing to put on the new quarterback that they have outside of Michael Penix? And now you got a brand new DC calling the game, and you just so happen to go up against a Lane Kiffin offense. That's a tough ask for your first time out, even if you've called plays before. So I think that game's really interesting.
Yeah, and I want to ask you this. DJ Durkin is regarded as a really good defensive coordinator. Jimmy, you know that. Billy, you know it. Jake, you know it. But you're asking, again, we brought this up earlier in the show today. You're asking a defensive coordinator to do a lot when you're trying to keep up with Lane Kiffin's offense, because he's not the only one that does it, but he's one of the best. But also Kiffin is brilliant. He's a mastermind at developing the quarterback. He instills a lot of confidence in his signal caller. Whether you go back to Alabama, 14, 15, 16, he won the SEC at Alabama as their offensive coordinator, quarterback coach, 3 years in a row with 3 different quarterbacks. That's really hard to do. And the one in 2014, Blake Sims out of Gainesville, Georgia, came to Alabama as a quarterback, and then they moved him to running back, and they switched him back to quarterback. That's hard to do. I think that's really – that's a testament. I think Lane Kiffin is just a hell of a coach. And if Ole Miss – in recruiting, and Jake, real quick before we go on to the next topic, but talk about what Ole Miss did in recruiting, how far out they were and how they closed with Lane Kiffin and that sense of urgency. He's appealing to a lot of really good athletes that want to come to Ole Miss, isn't he?
Yeah, well, Lane speaks the language. That's the thing. Lane's in that age group, too. He's right in the honey hole. He's not old enough where he doesn't understand, but he's not young enough where he looks like he's faking it. He's kind of right in the middle there, and he's had success. I mean, he was the head coach at the Raiders. He's a really young guy. He's been around. People know the name. But what he does, in my opinion, the best is he understands, number one, the power of social media. I think that's helped him a lot in recruiting. And number two, the power of being different and offering something. It's funny, he goes and works for Nick Saban. He's one of the strictest, most, we're going to do it this way by the book. We're going to try not to be flashy, and you're not going to show people up to Lane Kiffin tweeting at Mike Leach now as the head coach at Ole Miss saying, we run the ship. And all the players and kids nowadays, they like that. But that's the modus operandi nowadays is I'm a dog. I want to be surrounded by dogs. There's nobody better than me. And while it's arrogant and some people may see it's off-putting, that's what the kids, when they get on the field, that's who they have to be. A lot of them just take it off the field, and Lane understands that, and he's able to use that. And it's a fun brand to be. He can do what he wants at Ole Miss. He has total control to run it how he wants to. But there's something, and excuse me, sometimes he talks about it in interviews. And DJ Durkin is a great DC. Number one, they don't have a ton of personnel either, to be honest with you, especially up front. So it really doesn't matter. But even when they do, Lane's going to have to start going the speed limit at least sometimes, especially in the second half when they're in games. And that's the hardest part, because as an offensive play caller, and it's your deal, the game's close. You want to say, let's put it in the overdrive and see if we can't score 30 more points. Well, that's great, but you've been operating at that same speed the whole time. Now the defense is tired. So because he can go multiple, that's the difference. Lane can go fast and go multiple. When Auburn tried to go fast, they could run 3 plays all out of the same formation. So that's the difference. He's just got to start slowing down a little bit throughout the course of the game so the defense can catch up even when they have numbers.
Well, Billy Roberts, you see over there in Atlanta, largest college football town in America, 6 million people. You've got Georgia Tech sandwiched in between Georgia, Auburn, Clemson, Alabama, Florida State to the south, Tennessee right up north, South Carolina and Clemson all around you again. Can Georgia Tech and Jeff Collins get that brand going again? I know they're really pushing. They call it the 678, the 770, the 404. They're trying to play the hipster deal over there. But, I'm in Atlanta a lot. You live there. They've got a great name, but does it resonate with these younger kids today? And are they doing what, in your opinion, what they need to be doing to attract people? Because when you think about Georgia Tech, you think about engineering, academics. You don't think too much about having a good time and going to college, and it's get a great education, no question. But can they get their program going in the middle of what they're in the middle of?
Well, I definitely think they can. And the recruiter has to have a little bit of excitement, a little pizzazz, kind of Lane Kiffin-esque. He's got to appeal to, hey, Atlanta sells itself. We happen to be the biggest school in Atlanta. And we've got a downtown stadium that's beautiful, and it's right in the middle of all these skyscrapers. And it's a very, exciting environment down there with the right, coach. I mean, there's some alchemy that he can use to sell Tech. Yes, it's a demanding school from an academic standpoint, but you never hear Notre Dame or Stanford gripe about that. They just shrug their shoulders like, yeah, there's certain guys we can't recruit, but they sell the other benefits of it. It's a great education in Georgia Tech. Atlanta's a cool city to live in as a college kid. There's a bar on every corner now, so it's super fun to be here as a kid. And if you have a stern, austere Bill Curry type coach, then it doesn't work. And he was a Georgia Tech alum himself, right, before he went to coach at Alabama. He played at Tech. He's an Atlanta guy, but he's not the right guy. You need an exciting young guy that's going to get after it and sell Atlanta rather than sell Georgia Tech. It may sound a little counterintuitive, but Atlanta's not a college town. It's not a little college town in the middle of nowhere. But for a certain type of kid, like say somebody who grew up in Miami, they're used to an urban environment, fast paced, lots of stuff going on. And maybe they want to get out of South Florida. Atlanta would appeal to them. So he could go to a place like Miami. And again, he's got to find the kid that can handle the academics, but he could talk him into coming to Atlanta because it's a similar city with a lot going on. It's kind of an exciting place. So that's what the message has to be. Come play college football in a cool city like Atlanta.
Yeah.
And if he can do that, he'll do fine. And, Bobby Kremlins did that to get kids from New York to come down and play basketball at Georgia Tech all those years ago. And it worked. He had John Sally and a bunch of guys that were all from Brooklyn that came down and they loved playing in Atlanta. But those were New York guys. And they played a better brand of high school basketball at the time up there. And he wasn't able to find great basketball players in the Atlanta area like you can today. Bobby Kremlins was, in a different era, and Atlanta was a much smaller town. But Bobby Kremlins was a New York guy. He went and got New York guys and brought them down. And Tech was in multiple Final Fours. They had guys going to the NBA every year. And so it can be done, and it can be done at Tech.
Yeah, it can. And look, we're going to hold that thought. And Jimmy, I'm going to throw a question to you because you're about up in Chicago, a huge, huge market. Of course, we know about the Bears and all the pro sports up there. But Illinois ranks as the 10th best state in America for high school football players. And there's a lot of talent up there. But you look at the Fighting Illini, that is basically just an exercise in futility. Before we take a commercial break, I'm going to do a live message here about one of our sponsors, Jim Karras Chevrolet, 2000 Covington Pike in Memphis. George Gully, our good friend over there, 22 years, the sales manager. George can lay claim to having over 4,000 happy customers buying new cars and used cars, trucks, and SUVs. The Karras family, nearly 70 years in the car, truck, and SUV business, not because they're lucky, but because they're great at what they do, finding you the right fit. You don't want to drive off the lot in something that doesn't fit. It's duck season. It's deer season right now. People are out and about. I'm over here in Park in Arkansas looking out the window at the farm at Crowley's Ridge. I use my vehicle every day. I don't get stuck. You better buy the right vehicle. They're closed today at Jim Karras Chevrolet, but they'll be open bright and early tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Most of us are working remote right now. No matter where you are, you're stationary, you're mobile, you're on the go. You've got to be in contact with your office, with clients, with prospects. No matter where you are, ask George Gully and the folks at Jim Karras Chevrolet about the Apple technology packages that are available. You are never out of touch. It is a force multiplier. It's a game changer. Check them out on our website, Jim Karras Chevrolet. Again, ask for George Gully, sales manager, our friend and a great sponsor of Sidelines. Hey, we've got Jimmy Hodge up in Chicago, Billy Roberts over in Atlanta, Jake Crane down in Tupelo, Mississippi, and we're going to be back to talk some more college football with you till 5 p.m. Central, 6 in the Eastern time zone, east of the Chattahoochee and the Caney Fork. We'll be right back. Okay. Hey, Jimmy.
Hey.
Yeah, Billy, that was a good point. I mean, Jake, did you agree with what Billy's saying about Georgia Tech? I mean, because I'm in Atlanta a lot, and Billy, of course, lives there, and there's that is the largest college town in America. What do you think about Jeff Collins and what he's doing with that branding thing about the 770 and the 404 and the 678? I mean, Atlanta it's a really cool town. And you being the youngest member of our panel, we lost him. Hold on. Jake, hey, we lost you.
Hey, I don't know.
The state just won a bowl game yesterday.
I got to ask that question again. Jake, we're on a commercial break, but what Billy was saying about Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
And I'm in Atlanta a lot. Billy lives there, but you're the youngest member of our panel. You think Jeff Collins can rebrand Georgia Tech? I mean, we know about the great education and all that stuff, and it's in the middle of downtown, skyscrapers, Coca-Cola, you name it. Can they do it?
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, if anybody can do it, Jeff can do it. I mean, he's got enough energy and he's young enough. I remember, playing against Georgia State, speaking of Bill Curry, when I was coaching at South, and we'd stay downtown, and I said, man, I bet it's so easy to recruit here just because there's so much stuff going on, and just the amount of women that I saw that, were close to my age walking around
everywhere.
But I do know the academics is tough, and you're exactly right about getting those kids from down there in Miami. It's just obviously academically, I think Notre Dame's kind of lucky. Number one, they've been really good for so long. It's almost kind of a staple now, but they're operating up in the north, really.
Okay, 10 seconds, guys.
Kind of coast to coast. But no, I think you can win at Tech. I mean, with where you're at, if it was me, I'd just strip the administration and say, listen, I need y'all to help me.
Okay, hey, Jake, 5 seconds. Hold on. Okay, Rob Brown back here with you. Another hour to go on the Sunday afternoon wrap-up show, www.sidelines.live, broadcasting from the Cherry Farm over here, Park in Arkansas. But a beautiful view looking through the Sunset Lounge at Crowley's Ridge over in Forest City. Man, it is duck season. It's deer season. Everywhere you go around here, there are people hunting something. Like Ted Nugent said, though, take your kids hunting so you don't have to go hunting for your kids. We're talking about trying to rebrand Georgia Tech football in a big city like Atlanta, 6 million people, 22 counties. And Billy, you're right. 159 counties in the state of Georgia, 22 counties is the metro Atlanta area. And there's so much talent there. Let's go up to Chicago. Jimmy Hodge, national college football contributor. What is the problem? And we know about the violence, the shootings, and there's a lot of problems that Chicago has. Not that Atlanta is problem-free, but look at the University of Illinois, look at the University of Georgia. That's like comparing hockey at Minnesota to hockey in the Everglades. Jimmy Hodge, your thoughts?
Well, in regard to Illinois, a detriment is its location. It is literally in the middle of nowhere, and relatively
It really
speaking.
is.
Uh, the only positive is, I mean, you're not endangering your life in trying to get there. I mean, two interstates do intersect there, but it's just not close to any large cities at all. And until recently, facilities were non-existent. Uh, the campus is not going to be confused with the most picturesque universities in the country. Um, but they do play in a Power Five conference. They have had a history of success. It's hard to believe, but as recently as 2007, they were in the Rose Bowl with the Zucker, Ron Zook, and you just have to be able to have a staff that can recruit. They can evaluate talent, how kids are going to fit into the program there. And that Rose Bowl team actually had kids. Mike Loxley was the offensive coordinator, and he is without question the best coach in the country in recruiting the DC Baltimore corridor, in which there are a lot of great players. But you have to know how to sell your program, and it's in certain ways you use the same approach you use in the SEC with the lower tier teams that haven't had success, and that is, hey, you've got a chance to play immediately, and that appeals to any kid
Yeah.
who you feel can play at that level and is competitive and has pride in himself and has that mindset that, hey, I want to build something, from scratch. It's easy to go somewhere where, there's already a lot of good players, and, you may not have a chance to make a big contribution, even though you're going to compete there, obviously. So there's a lot of things that an experienced coach can sell, but again, though, you have to have kind of, I compare it a little bit to what Memphis has been able to do. Justin Fuente was able to create momentum there, and you get two or three good seasons, and then the players that are a part of that develop confidence, and when they go home and yeah, they see their friends and maybe younger players and that they think might be able to play at that level one day, and they run into them at camps. They say, "Hey, listen, uh, if you want to play big time football, hey, Illinois is the place to come. We're building something really new." And that's how you have to approach it. And at Georgia Tech, I kind of look at it in a similar way. First of all, if a kid gets admitted to Georgia Tech, they get you in. That means right there, you've got to, if you'll just put the time and effort in, you're going to be okay academically, because that's why these tutors spend millions. I mean, these universities spend millions of dollars on tutors. They're there to help you get through. And I've known people that went to Georgia Tech and were familiar with athletes, and the athletes told them, if you just put in the time and effort, a lot of people don't realize this, but professors are always going to appreciate effort.
Oh yeah.
If you're in that classroom every day and you show that you're willing to learn and you're giving your best effort, you're going to be okay. You know, and so there's and again at Georgia Tech, they've got a rich history. They've had a lot of success. I mean, they've won the national championship more recently than
Georgia.
most SEC schools. 1990, they
Yeah.
were national,
including University of Georgia.
Yeah.
By the way.
exactly, by 10 years. Yeah. So and then Jeff Collins, he's from Conyers. He's familiar, with Tech and their history and all of that. So there's a lot of things to sell if you can, and we've all talked about it many, many times. But if you've been around the block long enough to know what it's like coaching at several different schools, knowing the different parts of the country, knowing the different cultures. If you can put together a coaching staff that can, that can function effectively, the strengths and weaknesses of each of your coaches, and, and, and and what areas of your recruiting territory that you're targeting or the different territories, you can really be successful because, you're limited to 25 players, 85 total, but 25 players you can sign in a year. There's enough good players out there that you can find 25 good players if you can evaluate players and just know their character, get to know their coaches, develop those relationships at the high school level in the different states. And a place like Georgia Tech, and like I said, as you mentioned in Illinois, there's a lot of good high school football players up there. That's the key to the whole thing. The head coach has so many responsibilities, but one of his big um, uh, uh, areas of where he has to be good is putting together a coaching staff that can, sell those points that I've been talking about.
Yeah, and look, we're going to be joined at 4:15 by Doug Dean, is going to be calling in from Birmingham, talking about this new Auburn coaching hire. But at 4:30, Billy, you mentioned him a minute ago, Harold Grader, executive vice president of the Liberty Bowl, AutoZone Liberty Bowl in Memphis. Of course, they've got a matchup coming up New Year's Eve, December 31st. That is this Thursday, 3:00. West Virginia and Army. I'm excited about it. I've been to 37 of the Liberty Bowls. I don't care who's playing. It's college football. But Jimmy, Jake, Billy, y'all are all right. You go to a school like Georgia Tech, you graduate with a degree in mechanical engineering, civil engineering, whatever, and you play football 4 or 5 years, man, people are going to be fighting over you. They're not going to ask what your record was in football. They're going to say, you made it through 4 or 5 years of college football, which is tough enough, and then the academic rigors of Georgia Tech, and you probably had a few gut grenades at the varsity end over there on 85, Billy. I wish Auburn still played Georgia Tech, by the way. Some of my best memories. But if you get a kid up to Fayetteville, Arkansas, this time of the year, now it's cold, but in the fall when the leaves are changing, that is another place spectacular. And if a guy likes to hunt and fish and do outdoor stuff, you got the Strawberry, the Mulberry River. There's so much to do. You got Dixon Street, incredible place. But I got to say this, Jimmy, I can't remember the last time Illinois had a football coach who worked hard to brand the Illini program, who went out and told the story nationally. It's like Illinois is like, they remind me of Carlton the doorman on the old Rhoda show. They just, it is the campus. One of the members of our Duck Club is from Champaign-Urbana. And he's a mechanical engineer, graduate in his mid-30s of Purdue. Now that's a heck of a program. Again, academic rigors, you wouldn't believe it, but hey, they put out a few quarterbacks like Bob Greasy and Drew Brees. They made it, and they're set for life. But great points that y'all are making with all of that. Jake Crane down in Tupelo, host of the J-Boy podcast. Jake, I want you to say something real quick before Doug Dean joins us. Tell me this. You look in recruiting. You look in recruiting at what happened. And Doug Dean is on the line with us. But in recruiting, you look at when you have a coaching change. I noticed schools are getting smarter. This is the third year we've had the early signing date in December. But you don't have much time. You've got to get somebody ready to go out there and recruit, because if you slip in recruiting, it can be really costly. But let's be joined here for a few minutes. Doug Dean from down in Birmingham, who's a frequent contributor to Sidelines and longtime Auburn fan. Got 2 Auburn grads, and one of his kids is currently at Alabama. And I bet that is a lot of fun, those arguments. Of course, we know who had the bragging rights this year in football, but something happened big this past week, Doug, and you're on with Jake Crane down in Tupelo, Billy Roberts over in Atlanta, and Jimmy Hodge up in Chicago. Auburn hired a coach, Brian Harsin, out of Boise State. And there was a couple of books written several years ago called Bodyguard of Lies about the deception, the campaign of deception waged by the U.S. and our allies in the preparation for the Normandy invasion, 6 June of 1944. And I said last week, all these coaches were supposedly turning Auburn down. I find it really hard to believe that a guy like Billy Napier turned Auburn down when he was making $800 a year and he was going to make $4.5 to $5 million. I bet his response, if he really was offered the job, was, "I'll be packed in 20 minutes." But Auburn got him a coach. I think it's a really good hire. But from your perspective, I think it had to be done. A change had to be made. But talk about how you accepting this hire of Brian Harsin and what it means to you, and what do you think he can do for Auburn? I don't care where he's from. Winners attract other winners.
Well, first of all, belated Merry Christmas to all you fine gents.
Thank
and
you.
An early Happy New Year's. And let me hasten to say, Rob, that to the listeners, make sure you tune into Jake's on the J-Boy Show, his interview of Auburn, former Auburn letterman and analyst Cole Kublik. Really strong take about the upside of this Brian Harsin. It's B-R-Y. It's going to take me a while to spell it with a Y because my middle name is Brian with an I. But before I dive into that, I'd be remiss if I didn't footnote Coastal Carolina Liberty game. Thanks a lot, Hugh Freeze, for showing us what may have been with Malik Willis. And I realize the competition's different. And then I'm going to probably sound like Clint Eastwood in Gran Torino telling you to get the hell off my lawn in terms of cats or dogs. Dogs or cats now. And did I see, Rob, a defender trying to drag a running back against his will across the goal line for a touchdown that led to a fumble? I know I'm old, but good God. It's just bizarre, and I know what they were trying to do. You know, nobody wants to play defense anymore. So that was an entertaining game, especially watching it with my good buddies at my hunting club. But to your point, I believe I'm a pretty decent proxy for a good, simple majority. I'm not sure about. I don't think you ever get Auburn fans to 100% of Auburn fans to agree on much of anything except beating Alabama. But I think it's a home run. Not so much that it's this big splash hire like an Urban Meyer that was never going to happen. May not ever happen with anybody from the looks of it. Or even in some ways a Mario Cristobal that I was pushing pretty hard, as you'll recall. But I think the more you study Brian Harsin and you sort of lay it juxtapose it with what Auburn most needs right now, there's a lot to like. But I'll put it this way. I believe that Auburn fans mainly are glad that we finally at least have the appearance and I think the reality of conducting a search that in the end was done the way you want to do it. It was not, rumor, lie. There was actually rumor, innuendo, fake news, lies. And by the way, Bill Clark never interviewed at Auburn. He put out a word either through Sexton or on his own that he turned Auburn down. Give me a break.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen that way. And I understand people are posturing and trying to build their brand up, but I got to hand a heck of a lot of credit to the moxie and professionalism of Alan Green. Certainly he had to have Dr. Gouge's support to conduct the process the way he did. I think Quentin Riggins was very instrumental in the more football specific interview questions, which if you saw the presser, Coach Harsin said that was not fair, man. All of a sudden I can hear Quentin and General Burgess and the committee, but I can't, my screen is blank. He's having to imagine who he's looking at while he conducts the Zoom interview. And I can tell you this from inside, when Harson's interview was over, the committee looked at each other and said, hire this guy, period.
Yeah.
The last footnote I'll add, and you want to call this a rumor, I report, you decide. Pretty funny that Mike Gundy called almost every day or through a representative perhaps wanting to interview, and Gundy never got an interview. I'm a man. I'm 40.
Well, he's a man with a mullet. I can tell you that.
Yeah. And I don't have anything against. I like many things about Gundy, but I think this hire, as Jay Boy and many others have weighed in on, and there's some detractors saying he won't be able to recruit. I mean, he's absolutely got to have a little bit of Southern flavor on his staff, and I think he knows that. I believe he told the committee that. So look for that. He's going to hire a couple of assassins that know how to recruit, and if he does that, I think that Brian Harsin, the person, is going to be a magnificent fit and be embraced by the Auburn family.
And I'm going to say this too, that I listened to this entire press conference, broke it down, and analyzed, and just my thoughts, my first impressions are, and Jake and I and Jimmy and Billy, and you've heard us talk about it, Maury, Auburn needed to hire an alpha male. Somebody that when they walk in the room, people listen. They shut up. This is one such guy. I believe he has the third highest winning percentage in college football over the last 6 or 7 years. Yeah. And again, if you what are the four things, and I'll throw this one to you, Jake, a football coach, can he evaluate talent? Can he recruit talent? Can he develop talent? And can he coach that talent and build a program? Well, when you're the coach, and Jake, you just moved back last year from Montana. When you're at Boise State, it's not Boise, it's Boise. When you're there in Boise State, Idaho, you've got to be a great evaluator because you're not getting the top tier players. Idaho isn't known for its great high school football. And you have to be great at finding the players and going in and getting players maybe that are overlooked. Now he's going to be at a place like Auburn. Okay, it's different. It's the South, but Auburn's located. Last time I checked, it's located in the South, right in the heart of Dixie in Alabama, on the Georgia-Alabama line, 143 miles north of the Florida line. Okay, there's so many players right there in their backyard. It's a lot like what Tim Corbin did, building the Vanderbilt baseball program into a national championship superpower. He said, if I can get the best players within a 250-mile radius of Nashville, we can have a great program at Vanderbilt. And look what he's done. I think Brian Harsin, he'll probably sign, he'll probably keep some coaches that are on the current Auburn staff, but he's going to put his footprint. And if he decides he's going to do the scorched earth policy, so be it. Because Auburn has got to make a change, but he's got something going for him. This is the second time he's replaced Gus Malzahn as a head coach. Yep. So what do you think about him? And so what? He doesn't have a Southern accent. I'll tell you what, they made fun of Nick Saban when he came south. Only one of his assistants came with him. Maybe none of them did. How'd that work out in recruiting for Nick Saban?
Yeah, number one, I do want to say, Doug, I really appreciate the kind words, man. Love the newsletter, the Daily Dose. If you enjoy keeping up with Auburn and all, you need to go check out the Daily Dose.
Oh, yeah.
It's probably the best Auburn newsletter out there. But really to me, and I agree, and I came on here all the time saying Auburn needs the Sharks. They're going to swim in shark-infested waters. But I think what they got as a coach, a lot of it depends on what the head coach looks at it, what prism he looks at stuff through. And Auburn needed a guy that didn't look through the prism of, of offensive structure and build it out. It's I look at the out of my prism, and it's like a company. And he understands the structure that you need. He understands the personnel that you need. Because when Auburn plays Alabama, it's not your team playing the other team. It's your organization versus their organization. And how your organization has competed every day, not just on the field at practice, but in recruiting, writing those letters, having enough people in places to stay in the back of the head of the mama of the 4-star D, and you have to have the rest of the passer against Alex Leatherwood. It's stuff like that. And what I think they got was a guy that's an alpha male, number one, and not afraid. That's the most important part because you can't operate if you're afraid. But number two, understands that he has to build an organization. And he walked around, and I'm sure when he was looking at this Auburn job, looked at this roster and said, wait a minute, I got Bo Nix, I got Tank Bigsby. I could possibly have Seth Williams. I know we're not very good up front, but we basically have free agency in the transfer portal this year, and I've had nothing but outstanding offensive lines. I think he saw an opportunity. I think for him to leave where he is from, he was born in Boise. He played at Boise, walked on at Boise. Boise gave him his first real big job. Then he left his first job as a head coach at Arkansas State to go back to Boise. He even said, I planned on being at Boise forever. But a Lion wants to change his diet when he thinks he can eat more. And I think that's what Brian Harsin saw, and that's what Auburn needs. They need a guy that'll walk in a room that Nick Saban just walked into, that Dan Mullen just walked into, that Kirby Smart just walked into, and a kid goes, man, that's Brian Harsin. That's Auburn's head coach. Not, kind of the goofiness that we've had. It's this guy is a real deal businessman who wants to get me to the league. And he's going to tell me every way he can. Not only that, how if God forbid something happens, he can set me up to where I can provide for a family when I get old enough. Because a lot of these kids haven't had anything growing up, and they need a guy to be able to do that. So you got a mentor, you got an alpha male, but you got a businessman, and that's what you needed.
That's right. Doug Dean, look, we're going to have you on here for a few more minutes, and because of the way the Sunday podcast is set up, I'm going to have to have you get off at 4:30, but if you can call back later, call back later in the show. We're going to have Harold Grader on for about a 15-minute segment, the executive VP of the AutoZone Liberty Bowl. Love to have you come back on, but I love, again, you put out the best, most informative newsletter out there for all. AU Daily does. I mean, there's no question about that. And it is so good. One thing real quick. You look at this, and Jimmy Hodges up in Chicago, Billy Roberts over in Atlanta. My first impression of Brian Harsin is this guy is uber competitive, focused, and will do whatever is necessary to win. I don't think anyone is going to outwork him. Your thoughts? Okay, Doug, hopefully it didn't get off yet. Didn't mean to.
No, I'm
throwing that to you, Doug Dean, real quick before we have to. Yeah.
Well, first of all, ditto to everything Jake said. I was joking with a friend of mine. Either Harsin is missing a chromosome, or he really knows what he's doing. He knows he's comfortable in his own skin to come down here in the state of Alabama. And Auburn is, pre-Saban, Auburn's has a lot of advantages, but was not the easiest place to win it all, but it can be done. And now you've got, it's the 800-pound gorilla in the room that and that was the first damn presser question that was put to it. So he said, "Oh,
yeah,
get the easy question out of the way first." But he didn't mind that. It's an opportunity to answer it. I like how he answered it. We're not going to beat Alabama by coming up practicing gimmick plays all year. You beat them by forming winning habits all year long in the weight room, all summer, every game. And that's the beauty of the whole thing. But I think he's going to be the kind of guy. First of all, he doesn't have a missing chromosome. He knows what he's doing, to Jake's point. He wants to come down there. It doesn't guarantee you that he's going to succeed at it. But this is a guy that has the competitive fire. He wants to do what he's capable of doing and test it on the biggest stage. Well, Coach Harsin, you're on the biggest stage now. Godspeed to you.
Yeah, and you're going to have a lot of people watching you. But again, when if I was asked that question about Alabama, I'd say, well, look, they've got a great program. We know that. My job is to focus on Auburn. You got to control the controllables. That's one of Nick Saban's saying that you hear over and over, and he's right. But both programs will make each other better. That's what that rivalry.
Rob,
yeah.
Quickly, Rob, before your guest comes on, and I don't want to. This is probably a family show, so I won't read the quote, but it's out there of Drinkwitz's quote. I think the more I study Harsin, he goes by Harsin to people that know him well. I think he's going to have something Coach Dye had that's really hard. You can't teach it. It's either you get it or you don't. It's judgment, and it's knowing with players when to kick their butt and when to love on them. And I think that he's got that gear he can shift in and out of and knows when to use it. And Coach Dye absolutely had that. Tuberville might have at times had it. I have a feeling Coach Harsin is going to have that in his arsenal.
Yeah, and Coach Jordan Shug certainly had it. I mean, he would suspend Terry Beasley or Pat Sullivan as quickly as anybody for violation of team rules. And it's that you got to be consistent. Doug, call us back in at 10 till 5. Want to get some more comments out of you. Harold Grader's going to be with us.
Great
Yeah,
show.
listen, always love having you on. We'll be back with you in 20 minutes. Before we take this break, let me say something again real quick about the Dorian Agency. Tom Dorian. My wife and Audrey, we're like most people. We don't really like talking about insurance. It's just something you got to talk about. It's like, most people don't like talking about trigonometry or math survey. But you've got to have insurance. You're crazy not to. Give Tom Dorian a call, the Dorian Agency. Easy to speak with. 328-901-328-5858. Office is located in East Memphis at 6240 Poplar Avenue. I've known Tom since 1978. He's a member of the last Purple Wave state championship team at CBHS with Coach Tom Nix. Also 3-year starter on the offensive line for the University of Memphis. Member of Cursillo. Great man. Father of 5. His brother John graduated with me in 82. The Warrior. And I got to say this. They have a team there at the Dorian Agency of great listeners. Having a conversation with Tom is like talking with a friend. He is a friend of mine. If you have never met him before, go to his office, 6240 Poplar Avenue in East Memphis, just east of Poplar and Ridgeway intersection, right next to the Chick-fil-A. Call him, set up a time. Look him on the website, sidelines.live. It's the Dorian Agency. And if you're like most Americans, you might go years between making a claim on your insurance, property and casualty, homeowners, or whatever. They have a program that will allow you to return up to 25% of your premium. Okay? So give them a call. That's the Dorian Agency, 901-328-5858. Check them out on our website, sidelines.live. It's the Dorian Agency. Also, Red River Ford Toyota. They're closed today. They're open bright and early tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Justin Wynn, the general manager, Rusty Howard, the sales manager, and John Dobbs Jr. You know the name, Memphis, the Mid-South. The Dobbs family's been in the car and truck business for a long time. They're back. That's right. John Dobbs would love to see his friends come over to Wynn, Arkansas. It's an easy trip on I-40. Get off at the Forest City exit, go north about 11 miles. Red River Ford Toyota right there. Going back and forth like our man Perko, Chris Perkins, to Heber Springs on Highway 64 in Wynn, right by the Walmart. Go south about a half a mile. You cannot miss it. Red River Ford Toyota on the right. They'll be open bright and early, 8 a.m. Monday. Great people to work with. They've got over 700 used cars, trucks, and SUVs. They have top-notch salespeople, service department, everyone there committed to making it the best experience ever when you go to buy a car, truck, or SUV. Hey, we'll take a quick commercial break. We'll be back with Harold Grader, Executive Vice President of the AutoZone Liberty Bowl. We'll be with you till 5 p.m. Central, 6 o'clock on the Eastern Time Zone. It's the Sidelines Sunday Wrap-Up Show. Ready? Okay. I thought let me get Harold Grader on the line here. Just 1 second. Okay. All right. Whoops. Good. Call now. Okay. Okay. Oops. Hey, Jimmy.
Hey.
Jake, you there?
Yeah.
All right, Billy, you there? Hey.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. All right, we got Harold Grader supposed to be calling in here in just a second. Okay. All right. Just 1 second. Yeah, you know who Gus reminded me of? Remember that show with about that football coach up in Minnesota? Who was Dick Van Dyke's brother, Jerry Van Dyke? Yeah.
He reminds me of Janet Reno.
Oh God. Ooh, man.
Well, Rob, one of the themes that you need to develop is unfortunately, when a coach leaves Auburn, Tuberville went to Texas Tech and then Cincinnati, but
yeah,
Chiswick hasn't coached again. Malzahn, Bowden took a big couple steps down, didn't coach for a long time. So, who knows where Malzahn will resurface, but that'll be an interesting.
Oh yeah,
thing to watch
it will.
too,
I don't hate him. I'm just saying we needed 10 seconds. Okay, 20 seconds.
He
Okay.
just was so freaking stubborn with the,
Oh, yeah.
determined to
Yeah.
make the running game.
Yeah, hold on one sec. Just one second. I'm calling Harold Grader.
Oh, I wish you'd only done that because you're at it right
Rob Brown.
Hey, bringing you on the radio, okay?
The Minnesota secondary
Okay.
was, and Auburn should have a field day.
Okay, this is Rob Brown back here with you for
Yeah,
the final half hour of the Sunday afternoon Sidelines wrap-up show. We've got Jimmy Hodge up in Chicago, national college football contributor. Billy Roberts, another one of our contributors over in Atlanta. Jake Crane down in Tupelo, host of the J-Boy podcast. And, hey, man, we're joined now by one of my favorite people, Mr. Optimism, Mr. Enthusiasm, the guy that wakes up every day bouncing off the wall. He makes Matt Foley, the motivation speaker, look meek and calm. Harold Grader. Harold, executive VP of the Memphis AutoZone Liberty Bowl, and got a matchup coming up here on Thursday, 3:00 here at the Liberty Bowl, West Virginia and Army. I don't care who it is. I love college football. I've been to 37 Liberty Bowls, Harold, and in this year of the virus, all we heard was what we can't do. We can't do this, can't do that. BS. Y'all have never wavered. You've stood your ground, and you're holding that flag high for the Liberty Bowl. And Harold, tell people about it, what's going on. It's a great event, and it's college football, and that's what matters.
It does indeed. Rob, I appreciate the introduction. Appreciate you having me on. And just for the record, I do not live in a van down by the river.
Sorry, I know you don't. No, but you are Mr. Enthusiasm. I miss you being on. I loved it when you were a sports anchor on Channel 5. I loved it. But
Well,
I love what you do. Though you were
appreciate
always,
that was
yeah.
It was a good time to be there, and this is even a better time to be here at the AutoZone Liberty Bowl. Obviously, an interesting week for us. The way the week started and the way it's ending, a little bit two different things, but we're excited about our matchup, and but it seems as if the entire country is excited about the opportunity for Army to come here and play West Virginia, and we're looking forward to that. As to borrow a line from Greg Sankey, through this whole season, the commissioner of the SEC, he always said, our goal is to crown a champion and get to the finish line. Well, they were able to get to their finish line, had an exciting championship game, and now we're into the postseason, the bowl season, and the finish line for us is in sight. This coming Thursday, 3:00 Central here in Memphis at the AutoZone Liberty Bowl, West Virginia and Army. And unfortunate to see the news today out of Nashville about the Music City Bowl not being able to be held due to COVID cases involving their teams. So, we're all proceeding with focus on game day, obviously fingers crossed, and hoping that our teams get here safely. And we all know what exactly that means, not just in their travel, but with their health. And, we want to put on a good show on Thursday. And again, we're excited about the matchup. And again, looking forward to showcasing two really good football teams.
And Harold, real quick before I go to Jimmy Hodge, there's no lack of enthusiasm from the members of the Army team and the West Virginia team. And I love that cheer about West Virginia, the Mountaineers. How about them ears? But they're excited to be here, aren't they?
They are. And, Neil Brown's done a really nice job in his 2 years there. They didn't go to a bowl game last year, so they're really excited about coming here. Neil, has certainly looked into and understands the history of our bowl game. He talked about it on Monday night when we announced that they were, or rather Sunday night when we announced that they were coming, a game that he grew up watching. And he certainly knows the history of the bowl and the legendary coaches that have walked the sidelines at our game. So now he has the opportunity to join that list of luminaries. And again, not having gone to a bowl game last year, they're fired up and excited about the opportunity to extend their season and play in the postseason. And Rob, let me just say this. From a national perspective, we've talked about this throughout the season on your show and others, that it seems as if a lot of the national guys quickly forgot about the circumstances of this college football season and what the postseason means in particular this year. Every conference didn't play the same number of games. Some conferences, some teams didn't get to play the number of games they thought they were going to get to play that were on the schedule and ended up getting canceled for one reason or another. So all of us in the bowl business, from the outset, always looked at the bowl season being an extension of the regular season. Again, knowing that not everyone got to play a 12-game schedule as normal, and that the bowl season would just be a continuation of the regular season in many ways, in many aspects. Certainly, we're still going to have the player gift packs and all of those fun things, but the activities aren't there because of COVID. Most teams are coming in the day before, at most maybe 2 days before the game. Our two teams are coming in on Wednesday to play on Thursday. But again, you ask those kids that get one more chance to be on that football field, whether these games are meaningful. And I guarantee you, I know what that answer is, an emphatic absolutely it is. And watching the games yesterday, and I got a chance to see, the game in its entirety last night, the Liberty and the Coastal Carolina game. You're going to tell me that game didn't mean something to those kids? Absolutely. And we think certainly our game is going to be meaningful for the players that get a chance to be here. And again, I think we all collectively need to take a step back and understand that it's not, as much as some aspects of the season seem normal, it isn't a normal season. And the same criteria that folks in the media might use to assess whether it was a successful season or not, take a step back and just think about it from the perspective of these young men and what they've been through, what these coaching staffs have been through, and the administration. This has been going on since June for a lot of these young men of when they came back to campus, and testing 3 days a week, and just all of the protocols and guidelines that they've had to adhere to. And some of them, got shut down and missed some games, and it just I can't imagine what that's been like. So to get to this point for all of the teams that are able to play, huge success, regardless of what happens on the field. Rob, it's a testament to the dedication and love of the game for these young men, these coaching staffs, the administration to get here. And that to me is a win. And if you're a college football fan and you have an opportunity in your community or to be able to travel to a bowl game that has fans, and we will have fans at our game, I say go. Celebrate the year, celebrate the end of 2020, celebrate the arrival of 2021, and do it by going to a bowl game if you have that opportunity, because with the year we've all been through, there's a lot to celebrate. And just to say a huge thank you to these college athletes to get through the season and get to the bowl game.
Yeah, and Harold, to echo and to, I guess, pile on top of what you're saying, I've been trying to point out the credit that needs to be given to the trainers, the managers, the football operations managers, the equipment operations, director of equipment operations. We have Dana Marquez, my friend from Auburn, on a lot. They have been working like on a wartime footing to get ready for the season. And to just listen to the negative narrative pushed by so many of these charlatans out there around the country that call themselves journalists. They only push an agenda of gloom, despair, excessive misery. If it weren't for bad luck, I'd have no luck at all. Wasn't that the hee-haw line? I mean, these guys are horrible.
That was it.
Harold, look, you and Steve Earhart, it's only 5 of you that do this. Now, you've got a lot of volunteers, and I can tell you, some of the coolest nights I've ever had in my life are being up there in that hospitality room at the Liberty Bowl over the years, meeting with writers that come in from all over the country, and the stories and the tradition. That's what makes this game so special. And I hope you never leave the Liberty Bowl. But if college football ever needs to have a spokesman, you need to be it. And I'm also proud I've gained tremendous amount of respect for Mike Orasco, the commissioner of the American Athletic Conference, and also Greg Sankey. So thank you for doing what you're doing. You have never wavered, and you have never yielded, and you are to be commended. Jimmy Hodge, your thoughts about what Harold Grader, Executive VP of the AutoZone Liberty Bowl, just said.
Yeah, well, Harold, I had a couple of questions for you, and I'd mentioned it earlier in our show about what it would be like to be these officials that spend virtually an entire year putting together all the different functions and tie all the loose ends together that's required to put on a bowl game of this magnitude, and then to find out just days before that, one of your teams can't play because of, the numerous positive virus tests and so forth. And it's funny because a few days before this occurred, I guess maybe about a week ago, I saw the actual news conference that Army held, and talking about how disappointed they were, to be left out of a bowl game. And to me, it was absolutely ludicrous that a team of Army's caliber, with the type of season they had, wasn't playing in a bowl game. I thought I was like in the Twilight Zone or something. And I was saying to myself, the football gods are going to take care of this. And lo and behold, you have the virus situation that occurs with Tennessee, and you've got an opening. And I guess my first question to you would be, you must have been thinking, man, how lucky could we possibly be that we've got a team like Army that's available? And then otherwise, what would have been your thought process? Would the game have been in danger? How did that entire scenario from your mindset kind of develop?
Yeah, well, certainly the timing of everything was incredibly critical. We left the office late last Sunday night, a week ago today, thinking and planning and engaging with West Virginia and Tennessee. And then we get up the next morning, and not too much into the day, we get the fatal phone call from Knoxville. Their situation had gotten worse, and they weren't going to be able to play. So they immediately, everybody, and of course, on Sunday night, Monday morning, we were certainly seeing the reaction nationally, just among fans on social media. Certainly, the media's reaction to Army not having a bowl invitation on Sunday. They certainly were probably the only team available at that point. So we jumped on that, and conversations with all the involved parties between the SEC. Do they have an option for us? Army, what were they thinking about? The Big 12 as the opponent, what were they thinking? And it all ended up in a very positive way for us and for Army, for us to be able to, by late afternoon, early evening on Monday, being able to invite Army to the game. And one thing folks have to remember in this unique situation with Army is the fact that to use us as the example on both sides of our matchup, we have contractual obligations and partnerships with two conferences, and in this unique year when records were not a factor, and basically if you've got a healthy football team, you were bowl eligible. So the meaning of quote unquote bowl eligibility this year, the definition was certainly not the norm either, but we all had contractual obligations to our conference partners. So because we were getting asked, well, why is a 3-7 Tennessee coming to the bowl game? Well, because the definition of bowl eligibility and our contractual obligations to the SEC made it what it was. But then circumstances changed on Monday. Army and Independent is there. They're looking for an opportunity. We're looking for someone to step in to fill the gap there, and it worked out for everyone. And again, for us, this is our 62nd year, and we take very important with us and very seriously is the name of our bowl game. And it's not just a name. It represents our country. It represents those who serve our country, and we take the word liberty with great meaning and dedication to what that means: liberty, freedom, patriotism, and to be able to have Army step in and be one of our teams this year is great. It's a great fit. They're a great story. 9-2. Jeff Munkin's done an outstanding job there, and just to hold them together has been an amazing story from the Army perspective. But it's our understanding, talking to them, since Monday, I think their players have only left West Point, have left the campus twice, and I think that was for like a pair of road football games. So these young men basically have been locked down on the West Point campus ever since they returned to school and returned to camp. So tough year. So luckily for us, it's all worked out. We're keeping our fingers crossed, and our teams come in on Wednesday, and we kick it off on Thursday at 3:00 Central, and we're making those plans and hoping that between now and then everything stays safe and we're able to play on Thursday.
Yeah, Harold, I want to say this too. Again, you're right. Liberty, patriotism, freedom, and the Liberty Bowl in a year where it's regular attendance. I mean, these games that they're packed. You all do a great job of, you do a phenomenal job of marketing the Liberty Bowl. And normally we know this, that when the teams are in town, one of the highlights is when the two football teams that play in the AutoZone Liberty Bowl make the trip to St. Jude Children's Hospital in Memphis. And this year it's going to be a little bit different, but knowing you, Harold Grader, and the Liberty Bowl team, Steve Earhart, you all will find a way for St. Jude children and the community to benefit in a lot of ways. And, you do so much with the expectation of not ever getting any recognition, but we know what you do. So hats off to you. Billy Roberts, you're over in Atlanta, another city, 5.5 hours to our east. Chick-fil-A has done so much over there with what for college football. Gary Stoken, we've had him on the show. Great guest. And you're on with Harold Grader. And Harold, I apologize for the late notice today. I'm over at the Cherry Farm in Parkin, Arkansas, looking out at Crowley's Ridge here in the den. We've been hunting so much. I don't even know what day it is. I know it's Sunday, but he did say, hey, man, what about Harold Grader? So sorry for the late notice. It reminded me to get you on because you were a great guest. But Billy Roberts, come on in.
Hey, Harold, good to talk to you again. I was on when the last time Rob had you on a couple of weeks back.
Yeah.
And I had put forth the idea that what if these tier of bowls like the Liberty Bowl became like the first round of an expanded playoff, maybe play that game the day after Christmas, and then, the New Year's Six, semifinal game on January 1st and I think you thought it was an interesting idea, but you said, TV contracts are kind of dictating that
Sure.
the playoff won't expand until the next round of negotiations. But that may be a compelling way to make these bowl games like Liberty Bowl, kind of step up and be part of a rotation of a quarterfinal game, in the future. Do you see that happening like the next 5 years? Kind of handicap when that may happen.
Again, to one of the points you mentioned, there are contracts in place for everyone. This is the first of a new 6-year contract with our conference partners, and the CFP plan is in place. I think everything runs through 2025. So unless there is some seismic shift, I don't see that changing. we like what we are and where we are, and if you become a part of some expanded or reconfigured playoff system, then you really got to take a look at it. And does the playoff become more important than the experience? Because I'm a believer in obviously I'm on this side of the aisle on things, and from the bowl perspective. But to me, having as having a bowl experience for the players is important. Being able to come to a new city and spend 4, 5, 6 days in a town and experience that city's amenities and the things that make it special. To me, that again is all a part of what we refer to as the bowl experience. And if you expand the playoffs and it just becomes about the game, those experiences go away. And I'm not sure that's, at the end of the day, healthy for the game of college football and what we're all trying to achieve. Because only the elite of the elite are really going to be in the hunt. The bowls have their place in the landscape of college football. It's part of the fabric of our country and what it means to these young men to be able to travel to a new city and have that experience in that city for several days, and to get that gift pack from their school and the gift pack the bowl presents. That's all a part of it. And, I'd hate to see that go away. And I think that's what makes bowl season so special and unique. And, but so much of the focus has become about, who makes the Final Four in the national championship game, and anything other than that, well, the game doesn't mean anything. I don't believe that. I don't buy that. And I would refer you to any of these young men. Again, the young men that played yesterday in those 3 games. Again, they got to extend their season and they got to go on the field one more time. Obviously, it's a different experience this year from what a normal bowl trip is. I don't know. We'll see where things go in the future, but I would hate to see college football as a collective entity lose that bowl game experience, because it is special, it is unique, and I think that's part of what makes college football college football.
Yeah, I totally agree. And Jake Crane, before we go to you, I'm going to go to Maury Gaston, who's on the phone with us from Birmingham. And Maury, you're on with Harold Grader, Executive VP of the AutoZone Liberty Bowl. And Harold, let me say this. I've known Maury since 1982, my freshman year at Auburn. He is a mentor to me, one of the wiser, more genuine people that you'll ever hear. He's a mechanical engineer. So let me just preface this by saying everything he says, he has thought about it in detail before he says it, and he means it. But Maury Gaston, a native of Sylacauga, Alabama, 715 West Magnolia, and now in Birmingham. Welcome to Sidelines on the Sunday Wrap-Up Show, and Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Well, thank you, Rob. I appreciate that. I do have I had a thought here, and it would involve an awful lot of people, and we don't have much time at all. But Army has replaced Tennessee, the Southeastern Conference's representative to the Liberty Bowl. And I was just thinking, why can't the SEC name Army as an honorary member of the conference for the day?
I like that.
I think that is a win-win-win for everybody.
Well,
Who in the
I
SEC
would say,
would not love to have Army as a member of the conference? And what conference would Army not rather be a part of than the SEC?
Absolutely.
Well, I know the commish. The commish is very active on social media, on Twitter. So maybe you should reach out to Greg via Twitter and make that suggestion for Ian.
That's right. You're in Birmingham.
To take under advisement between now and Thursday and see how they react to that.
Yeah,
I'd rather reach out
somewhere
in a more
Nick
direct
Saban's getting
way.
ready. Somewhere Nick Saban's getting ready for the triple option just because you said that, just in case.
Yeah. He'll be prepared. But I mean, Harold, I tell you, it is Maury. That is great. But you talk about a 9-2 Army team. And what I think there were 2 schools in the country that played a full 12-game schedule this year. That's hard to do. And but I think this year, and I'm going to go to Jake Crane next, this year more than any other year that I can remember. And my dad's old enough to remember 1941, got home from church, December 7th, 1941. He was 13. The Japanese had bombed Pearl Harbor. And in 1942,
I thought it was the Germans, according to
Belushi. That's right. They're on a roll. But, by the way, Harold, I did say that Belushi line, the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor. My dad texted me within a minute or less than a minute on the show a couple of weeks ago, said, boy, what are you talking about the Germans? It was the Japanese. I'm like, Dad, it was a play on words. It was a little bit of an embellishment, but he being an architect at age 92 and an artist who works every day, and that man, I'm gonna tell you what, he's a lifelong narcoleptic too. But anyway, I digress. But Jake Crane, you're on here with Harold Grader, and and Harold, Jake's dad, Kurt Crane, was at Memphis and transferred back to Auburn, was an All-American linebacker in '86 and '87, and is a legend at Auburn. And his son, 9 years of coaching, junior college and smaller Division II and III college football around the country, has a podcast called the J Boy Podcast, and it's great having him on here. And his knowledge of football, his passion is incredible. And Jake, just wanted to kind of give you a little bit of an introduction for Harold, but come on in here with your question. We love your enthusiasm, and Saban is getting ready now. All the alarms are going off at the football complex in Tuscaloosa.
I will say, just in case Joey Jones is listening, I did coach Division I for 4 years. I don't want him to get upset at South Alabama, but
no, okay, no, I knew that.
No, I'm just messing with you. I had him on the show, and he actually listens to me when I'm on here, so I know he's laughing somewhere right now. But Harold, I wanted to ask you. I've always thought, number one, putting together these bowls. We played in the Camellia Bowl against Bowling Green a couple years back, and you talk about the experience. And, a bowl game, especially the ones outside of the playoff, is truly a reward. That's what it is. And like you said, and the memories I take from it, we ended up losing the game in heartbreaking fashion, and that was tough. But, I remember going and meeting with the Bowling Green guys and then going to a comedy show with them that was put on by the bowl together, hanging out with the coaches from the other side, our players kind of mingling with theirs, getting to know each other. And some guys actually became lifelong friends that met each other at that bowl game. So I do want to echo that and say that, the experience for these guys, because, and again, it's a lot of fun playing college football and all that stuff, and you got a lot of advantages. But man, is it a lot of work. Man, is it a lot of work going to practice as a 17, 18, 19-year-old, 20-year-old kid, things having to handle a full workload, and you do all these things and you get this routine, and now you actually get to go enjoy yourself, and there are people rewarding you for what you did, for the success that you had. And it's an achievement, and it's something that, you get to take with you, especially for the older guys that are leaving. It's one more chance to be around some of the best friends they're ever going to have for a couple more weeks in a new place. So while I am a fan of expanding it to 8, I would much rather not lose the purity of what a bowl game really means outside of those, because it's truly a game that's about the players, and it's truly a reward for the players.
I would agree with that 100%. And, don't know what things will look like down the road. I would just caution, and again, a lot of this is media-driven opinion more than anything, is the last thing we want to do is to turn college football into the NFL. And in the NFL, it's all about the playoffs and making the playoffs and obviously winning the Super Bowl. And we have our Final Four in college football, the semifinals, and then the national championship game. And I think the more you add to it, not sure we're heading down the right road as far as what's the best for the game of college football. And are we headed towards more of a separation between the Power Five and the others? Don't know, but when you look at that topic and that question, they all have to have each other to exist. And out of conference games, those guaranteed 2 or 3 wins out of conference for most Power 5 teams, those are important. Got to have them. Coach needs the W's. So I think we should proceed cautiously and do, at the end of the day, do what's best for the game of college football. And I'm not convinced yet that expanding the playoff and making it more like the NFL is in the best interest of college football. You got to show me I got to see the facts. I got to see the evidence of that.
I think that's a great point. And Harold, I always look at numbers that over the last 110 years, on average, 4 schools a year can lay claim to a national championship. In the past, schools would claim anything. You know, as Coach Bryant once said, if a laundromat in Tuscaloosa wants to give me a national championship, I'll claim it. And Alabama claims 17, and you can poke holes in some of them, but they really could claim 26. I've done the research. It's amazing. But what makes college football so special is that debate. And it is a 24/7, 365. And this is the case where too much of a good thing can be dangerous. And we don't want to hurt that brand because college football, you're right, Harold, it's about the logo on the side of the helmet. The NFL, it's about the name on the back of the jersey. And Art Kehoe, former offensive line coach, who was a great one at Miami, said at a conference, at a college football conference years back, a friend of mine was there. He came out and said, look, the problem we're going to have going forward in football is going to be the wide receiver. They're going to become the problem, the prima donna. And all you got to do is think about Antonio Brown and people like him. These guys are just complete reprobates, and they hurt the game. The best friends you'll ever have in life typically are the big guys, the offensive linemen. You get in a fight, Harold, at the McDonald's parking lot on Poplar at a State on a Friday night in high school. The little wimp that looks like Woody Allen throws a punch at the other guy's player, and who steps in front of him and takes on all the punches? It's some big offensive lineman named Lumpy or something like that. But, it is amazing what a special thing we have in college football. Harold, look, we kept you long.
And Rob, I would just say in closing to all of that, I would also say in this debate about expanding the playoff is don't want to become the NFL, and you also don't want to diminish the importance of the regular season. And if I would stand by the statement that the regular season in college football is a playoff. And week in and week out, especially when you get into the conference schedule, it is an elimination process. And I think college football has the most meaningful regular season of any sport, and that's another piece of it that we don't want to damage and diminish the importance of the regular season of college football, because I think you see that in major league sports, whether it's the NFL, the NBA, the regular season is just a window dressing. It's a show, all to get to the playoffs. And we don't want to, I would say, let's don't damage the regular season of college football and the meaningfulness of the games week in and week out.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. And, bottom line, it is just such a special game, such a special product. And the fact that these bowl games, what you and the Liberty Bowl crew are doing, and all the people in Memphis, I'm getting texts from them right now that are listening. Our friend Boyd Wade, Chris Bird, Dillard Dorr people, they're all supporters of the Liberty Bowl, Harold. And whenever there's a problem, I'll tell you this, and I know you got to go, and we're going to bring Doug Dean's going to call back in. We're going to go a little bit long today, but you always address the problems. You call people, you go by their office, you go see them. You are such an impactful person. And so I want to say that, okay. I want to say that it means so much to you and the Liberty Bowl people to put a great product on. And we know it. We can feel it. The moment the Liberty Bowl starts, it is a great experience. But Harold Grader, thank you so much. And give us our send off real quick. Anything you can tell people that are out there wondering, should I go to the game? Can I go to the game? Give us the Cliff Note version of why the Liberty Bowl, because I'm going. I just got tickets.
Indeed. Well, to borrow a line from Neil Brown, the West Virginia coach, he made this statement the other day. He said, I think 49 of the 50 states are going to be rooting against us when we take on Army in Memphis. And whether that's true or not, I would say if you're in Memphis, in the area, and you're inclined to go to a game and see the last college football game of the year in Memphis. We're it.
Yeah.
60-second AutoZone Liberty Ball coming up on Thursday at 3 o'clock. And for whatever your motivation, come celebrate college football. Come celebrate the year, the beginning of the new year. Come on and root for West Virginia or Army. But we're going to have a crowd. We're going to have somewhere in the 12 to 13,000 range, we believe. And come support, come enjoy, and celebrate the game of college football. And you can get your tickets. Call us here at our world headquarter offices, 901-795-7700.
And what's the website that you have for the Liberty Bowl as well?
And it is AutoZoneLibertyBowl.org. You can see ticket information there, and we'll be glad to get you taken care of, and we invite you to join us.
Hey.
And we'll ring in the new year and say adios to 2020.
Hey, I'm looking forward to it. Harold Grader, as always, Executive VP of the AutoZone Liberty Bowl. Thanks for taking time out of your Sunday afternoon to join us. And we're going to be on a few minutes longer. We're going a little bit long today because we were taking off for Christmas and yesterday as well. But Harold Grader, we will see you Thursday at the Liberty Bowl, and everybody that can go support the Liberty Bowl. It's about college football. It's about St. Jude. It's about winning. Thank you so much. Okay,
Thank you,
guys.
Rob. Happy New Year to everybody.
Same
Thanks.
to you, Harold.
Take care.
Merry Christmas. Happy New Year and all the good stuff. And we're going to be, Doug Dean's going to be back on here with us here in just a minute. And, that I love that message about college football. It's about, we don't want to turn it into the NFL, where the NFL is all about the playoffs. The NBA is all about the playoffs. And again, not enough credit is given to the college age kids today. Everybody wanted, I think a lot of people out there wanted this season to be a disaster, and that just didn't happen. And the discipline, the hard work, and coming together of the students, the college athletes, the coaches, and everybody, it's just been incredible to watch. Okay, we got Jimmy Hodge up in Chicago. We've got Jake Crane down in Tupelo, Billy Roberts over in Atlanta, Maury Gaston in Birmingham, Doug Dean in Birmingham. And Doug, we were talking with you before we broke for Harold Grader of the Liberty Bowl. That game coming up, Thursday at 3, Army and West Virginia. How about them ears? I love that cheer, man. You go to a West Virginia game, I mean to tell you, you will hear more than anything else. You hear War Eagle a lot, or Hotty Toddy, or Rocky Top, whatever. But man, West Virginia comes to town. It's how about them ears? But Doug, you were making some great points there before we go. Of course, Doug, a fine Irish Catholic graduate of John Carroll Catholic School there in Birmingham, host the one who puts together the editor of the AU Daily Dose, which is as good as it gets. But Doug, carry on and pick up those thoughts. We're going a little bit long today, and then we'll be off the air. We were off Friday for Christmas and off yesterday morning. So we're going a little bit long, what we call the Sidelines Extra today.
Yeah, thank you, Robin. Pick up. I enjoyed the Liberty Bowl talk, and I'm reminded it was when Coach Bryant, I think, played Ohio State. No, it might have been UCLA in the Liberty Bowl when you were in kindergarten, Rob. And me and I was an Auburn guy back then, obviously, but what else did I have to do? I was lured to go to on an entrepreneurial effort as a sophomore in high school, I believe. My friend's father had manufactured, he had purchased about 2,000 of these hats, sort of the painter style hat, and we were going to get rich as high school kids, right?
Yep.
And we show up in Memphis, and these hats, believe me, they barely covered your top of your head. Nothing warm about them. We show up ready to sell out and make a killing for beer money. And it was about 15 degrees in Memphis. And these guys came in with toboggans, custom logos for Alabama and UCLA. And that was a lesson in planning, strategic planning. So that's a good segue. I think the big thing, going back to the hire of the bombshell news of Auburn's coaching search and letting Malzahn his walking papers, I think they had to do that. There was starting to be an apathy and malaise in the air, and there could have been apathy and borderline revolt if they had made the wrong move in the search. I'll leave it at that. But to me, the really big picture, if y'all come with me up to about 10,000 feet, is the strategic timing of this. If you're going to use Russian disinformation for Auburn's coaching search, then it works both ways. And most Auburn people would say, well, everybody knows that Coach Saban's going to retire in 2 or 3 years. That's not, I don't know that to be true, but we're going to say it anyway, right, Rob?
Sure.
And the strategic, and he can coach as long as he wants. He's good for the SEC, and God knows he's good for Alabama. But the strategic position Auburn can be in, if this works out well with Coach Carson, you build the foundation now, you start to have a buzz, and you've got a guy in his mid-40s that if he's winning and recruiting and, engaged with the fan base, I think that part will come pretty easy. Then there's an opportunity to have a strong foundation when there is the potential for chaos. I'm not talking about losing, but it's almost inevitable that there's going to be some disruption in the aftermath of someone as legendary as Coach Saban riding off.
Absolutely. Rob, can I add?
Yeah, Maury, come on in here.
I've got it on good authority from folks that our friends in the Red Elephant Club were very engaged in this disinformation that's being discussed. And they were doing everything they could to disrupt this plan and this process. And I am totally confident that it's because they understand that what we're doing today is going to have a significant impact on them in 3 or 4 years. And they want to do everything they can to make sure that it does not work. And I am confident that they failed.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I mean, and Jimmy Hodge, you're on up in Chicago. And when you look at all the coaching searches, there was a search firm that Auburn hired out of Atlanta, and great points that you're making there, Maury and Doug. And Auburn goes out and hires a guy from Boise State who's a Bronco. What he said, I'll be a Bronco forever. And Jake Crane had to get off because he had another interview to do. But he made a point. This guy is the perfect fit for Auburn because he thinks he's great, and there's only one place he can go. And now he's going to have a lot of things that he never had before at Boise. Yeah. But Jimmy, looking at him nationally, you're up in Chicago. Obviously, you played high school football there in Clinton, Knoxville, played college football, baseball at La Monroe and UT Chattanooga. But you look at it nationally, Boise isn't a program that just got hot for 3 or 4 years and kept rolling. I'll tell you what I compare them to with Gary Barnett when he was at Northwestern. Mm-hmm. Did a heck of a job. And then look what Pat Fitzgerald has done. They've kept that thing going again, and they've won those bowl games. And you can argue pro or con against the win over Oklahoma or beating Georgia, whatever they do. Did that game matter at the time they played them? Well, all you can do is go by the final score of when they played. But what are your thoughts real quick? I know we're going a little bit long today on Sidelines Extra. We've been off the last 2 days. But give us your thoughts.
Matters, and Northwestern's playing us this week.
Yeah, exactly. That's my point. And triple overtime. Ben Tate, don't throw the ball and body slam it over the goalpost. But Jimmy, what are your thoughts on that? You are great at getting inside and extrapolating information and putting it in the vernacular. So give us your thoughts on that.
Well, my thoughts on Boise State is that it's one of the greatest stories in the history of college football. I mean, 50 years ago, they were playing junior college football.
Yep.
And they just made the plunge. I mean, they did it in small steps. They went up to the what is now the FCS level, and tried to get better. Well, actually, maybe I think they may have gone D3, D2, and climbed the ladder in that form. And they had a coach there for a long time that's kind of considered the patriarch of the program. I can't remember his name, but they showed him during the Oklahoma game in the Fiesta Bowl. And a lot of people don't realize, but the person that they hired to bring Boise State into Division I football, and the way fate had it, he was only there 1 or 2 years, was Houston Nutt.
That's right. That's right.
and he, after his first or second year, he got the Arkansas job, and then Boise made a string of just good hires. They had
Dan Hawkins.
Dan Hawkins. Yep, they sure did, and they oh gee, if you
Chris
wouldn't ask me,
Peterson.
I could tell. Yeah, well, yeah, but before Peterson, after Hawkins, it was um, oh gosh,
Anyone?
but anyway,
Bueller class? Anyone? I'm
but
drawing a blank. I've been hunting so much,
but
Jimmy. I don't know what day it is.
they had season after good season, and then I think when Hawkins went to Colorado,
Yeah.
was when Peterson took over, and that was his first year when they beat Oklahoma, and one of the best college football games I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And that's what really put Boise on the map, because Fresno State had been the big dog in the Mountain West until up to that point. And then when I remember David Carr,
Yes.
he was the first player picked in like 2002, and they had started the season with a big road victory at Wisconsin, and it was thought they were going to go undefeated, and then Boise State came down there and beat them at Fresno, and in my mind, Fresno's never been the same, and Boise took an upward trajectory. So they're the classic example of getting that big win against Goliath, against Oklahoma in the Fiesta Bowl. And that's also a game where I really gained a lot of respect for Bob Stoops, because that year they lost their starting quarterback. He got suspended from the team for a year, and they had a converted wide receiver that played quarterback for him that year. But still, they had a good year. But that game was such an incredible game that on the sideline, Stoops was just, he had this smile on his face because he realized just what a special game it was, and that you possibly might have a new program on the block here that was getting national recognition that was never going to go away. And the whole atmosphere was just so cool about it. And Boise's just done a great job of just keeping that stature,
Yeah.
So just when I think of Boise State, I just have a lot of respect for them, as I do BYU this year,
Oh, yeah.
because they lost virtually every game on their schedule. They had a bunch of Big Ten teams scheduled, and they had to schedule 7 or 8 teams on the fly. And like Boise, they've never asked for anything. They've earned everything on their own. But BYU scheduled at least 5 or 6 games on the fly this year.
Yeah.
They'll play anybody, anywhere, anytime. And I just have tremendous respect for them. So, I mean, anybody that's ever been associated with Boise, in my mind, is just a solid football guy, is going to be unafraid of any challenges. And they're going to let the chips fall where they may.
Yeah, and I'm absolutely agree with you on all those counts. You look around you at that Boise brand, the blue turf. It's just amazing the marketing that they've done. And kids, listen, they've had kids from Memphis. Cedric Wilson was a player from Melrose High School in Memphis who was on the Tennessee Volunteers 98 national championship team, played in the NFL for a while. And Cedric Wilson Jr. went to White Station High School, where my kids went, and ended up going to Boise State. And they recruit, that is a national brand. And that's why I think that Brian Harston coming down to Auburn is, bottom line, you look at a lot of the best coaches, they were the 5th or 6th. Pat Dye was 5th or 6th. Auburn had tried for, believe it or not, I think Dick Crum at North Carolina in 1980. Bobby Bowden, they met with him in Eufaula at the Holiday Inn there at the State Park at Lake Eufaula. And Vince Dooley was the first one. He had told his former roommate at Auburn, then Governor Fob James of Alabama, he was coming. And then he backed out. So then it was Bobby Bowden, Dick Crum, Grant Taft, and then Pat Dye, who had the balls to resign Christmas Eve 1980, married with 4 kids. And he, listen, man, you talked about coaches, coach, Pat Dye, when he got that job at Alabama in 65 out of the Army. And Jimmy, we've talked about Boyd Boylston helped him get that job, and Doug and Maury. When Pat Dye took that job at Alabama in 1965 as an assistant with Coach Bryant, he was making $500 a month, and he maintained his membership or status in the National Guard, and would go to Camp Shelby, Mississippi, down near Hattiesburg 2 weeks every summer just to get the extra pay. And look, it's just amazing where these coaches come from. But Dye was 5th or 6th on the list. That worked out well. Coach Bryant, was on the staff at Vanderbilt with Red Sanders. Heard about a coaching football vacancy in Arkansas. Was driving through Memphis, December 7th, 1941, crossed the bridge into Arkansas when news broke of the, I emphasize, the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. Coach Bryant spent the night, I believe, in Memphis, registered, and joined the United States Navy the next day. I don't know. I think he was going to look at the job at Fayetteville. But bottom line, there are 2 great coaches that have come from Fordyce, Arkansas, Morrow Bottoms. The first most famous is Coach Bryant. Second most famous is Larry Lacewell, who built up Arkansas State, the Dallas Cowboys, who's 81 years old now, lives in Jonesboro. He had a stroke. He's, going through some rough times, but a brilliant mind. And he always likes to say, I'm the second most famous coach to come out of there. But I think Brian Harston is a great hire for Auburn. Alpha male culture. I think he's going to do what it takes. But what bothers me the most, and I don't know if I can't say this, Jimmy, Doug, Maury, and everybody listening, but the attacks on Kevin Steele's character really burn my ass.
That's awful.
I'm sick of it.
His character is impeccable.
Yeah, I'm sick and damn tired of it. Okay. And all this God-forsaken narrative that people put out there about Kevin Steele. Look, if he's friends with boosters, so be it. But I don't know. I like Kevin Steele. I like to think my kids know character. My son Wilson has gotten a chance to talk to Coach Steele many times, especially his freshman year, and I think, he was a little bit homesick, whatever. Kevin Steele just would come he worked at the locker room in Auburn and get to talk to him. That's a big deal. I mean, this is a good guy, and I hate it. And I'm not saying it for Auburn, but for anybody. People talk about these coaches. They besmirch them, their families, whatever. You can say what you want about Nick Saban, but the guy's great for Alabama. He's great for college football, and he's a regular celebrant at Mass. And what's wrong with that? Now, the first 2 maybe, but the bottom one, the last one, you can't forget it.
It's the disinformation that those other people put out.
Yeah,
that's
exactly. That's exactly. And I think that's part. But you get people like Maury, you, Doug, Jimmy Hodge, Jake Crane was on here with us earlier. Billy Roberts, Harold Grader. Man, if I left anybody off, I apologize. But let me say this, guys. We've gone long today. It's the Sidelines Extra because we were off Friday for Christmas. And yesterday, again, Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. It is a great time of the year. Celebrate college football. And, I want to say to everyone out there, to all of our sponsors, thank you so much. We'll be back on with you Friday, New Year's Eve. Remember the schedule. Go to our website, www.sidelines.live, and we are on every Friday, 3 to 5 p.m. Central, 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern, sidelines.live, Saturday mornings, 8 to 10 a.m. on Sports 56 WHBQ, 96.1 FM, and the new FM 98.5, sports56WHBQ.com website, www.sidelines.live website, and on Sundays, the wrap-up show, 3 to 5 p.m. Central. Always, we love our guests, our regular contributors. We're not here without you, but we're here to serve and to put out the best information we can, and we're not afraid to tell it like it is. So, Jimmy, thank you as always. Maury, love your call in. Doug Dean, can't beat this. Everybody go enjoy it. It's duck season. It's hunting season. It's deer season. It is a great time. Hey, it's great to be an American and get out, watch college football, and go find someone you don't know and do something great for them with expectation and nothing in return. Don't quit because you're tired. Quit because you're done. We're quitting because we're out of airtime, and we'll be back with you Friday. Thanks again, everybody. Have a great night. All right.
Thank you, Rob.
You bet.
Oh, wow.
Hey guys, thank y'all for going a little bit long with us. Jimmy, you still there? Yeah. Oh, man. Yes. Hey, Mark.